This film is purely fictional. Please do not imitate it. Your like and subscribe are the motivation for me to update. Chapter 333 Hidden Checks and Balances. Almost. Death had no intention of hiding anything. Without waiting for Zhao Sun to ask, he took the initiative to say, at present, District 7, District 9, and District 18 have all fallen into a paralyzed state without a leader in defense. Have they been annexed by other districts? Zhao Sun asked curiously. The neighboring districts want to fight for it, but it has not been annexed for the time being. Death replied, but it won't last long. Zhao Sun didn't ask any more questions, but his opinion of death had changed a little. It was not as inhumane as described by the whistle, nor was it old-fashioned, and it did not mean to loyalty to the endless train. Otherwise, the god of death would not take the initiative to reveal this information. It seems that the god of death is only cruel to volunteers, and ordinary people will not have any problems as long as they don't provoke him. Apart from his expressionless face, the god of death is quite easy to talk to. At this time, the god of death spoke again. Now let me talk about the relevant rules. He looked at Zhao Sun, and it was obvious that Han Bing had already known what he was going to say next, and now he was talking specifically to Zhao Sun. Zhao Sun came back to his senses and listened attentively. The mission is basically twice a month, with an interval of about half a month between each mission. The death god spoke slowly, making sure Zhao Sun could understand it with just one sentence. There is generally no time limit for the mission. As long as you can complete it, you can get points as a reward, but the faster you complete it, the higher the points. Zhao Sun nodded, indicating that he understood. Although there is no time limit, the faster you complete it, the higher the points you get. Who would choose to delay the completion time? After the player leaves the endless train, every minute and every second in the real world will be deducted from the survival time. The Grim Reaper continued. Once the survival time is reset to 0, the player will die immediately. Note that there is no survival time reward for tasks performed in the real world. Zhao Sun continued to nod. Before the survival time is reset to 0, at least 3 days must be left so that it is convenient to return to the endless train to participate in the dream game and replenish more survival time. This should be the fundamental reason why the god of death has to return to the endless train every once in a while. The god of death was very satisfied that Zhao Sun did not interrupt, and he was more patient when he spoke. Players must first complete the mission in the real world. After the mission is completed, the player will not be forced to return to the endless train. The player can go to any place and do whatever he wants. Once a new mission appears, it must be executed immediately. Zhao Sun still did not speak, but just signaled the god of death to continue. The god of death changed his sitting position and continued. When a player suffers a fatal injury or any other damage in the real world, the corresponding points can be deducted to restore the body to its original state immediately. Zhao Sun understood. The number of points used should be determined by the degree of injury. The advantage is that when performing tasks, the player's life safety can be greatly guaranteed. The disadvantage is that the points are consumed very quickly. Once the points earned by performing tasks in the real world are not enough, if the player wants to have this guarantee all the time, he naturally has to go back to the endless train and accumulate more points through the survival game. Of course, this is not a problem for Zhao Sun. He has the ability of Resurrection Rage. As long as the situation is not extremely urgent, and there is no dilemma of being picked up by the corpse, he can offset the negative state of the body without using points most of the time. The god of death was silent for a moment, and then said 3 sentences in succession. If you reveal anything about the endless train and the survival game to other non-players in the real world, the player's survival time will be reset immediately. The 3 of us will have an additional communication system than other players, and we can communicate by voice or text. Our tasks this time are different. We will be sent to different locations. You can decide how to complete the tasks. As long as the result is to complete the task, the process is fine. Death stood up and said the last sentence to Zhao Sun. Don't contact me casually. Complete your own tasks. After saying that, he turned around and was about to leave. What about the punishment for failing the task? Zhao Sun finally asked. You said so much, but you didn't mention the punishment. I said before that there is no time limit for the mission, so you can try again after failure. Death glanced at Zhao Sun, but there was no impatience in his expression. Until your survival time is reset to 0, or you are killed by someone in the real world, the mission must be continued. So, you can't return to the endless train until the mission is completed. Zhao Sun concluded. This is a disguised punishment. That's right. After saying this, the death nodded slightly and left. Han Bing did not leave immediately with the Grim Reaper like she did last time. She sat in a wheelchair with her head slightly lowered, looking like she was asleep. It was not until the compartment door was closed again that she slowly raised her head and looked at Zhao Sun and asked, "Are you satisfied with the identity of deputy train conductor?" Zhao Sun did not know why Han Bing suddenly asked this. He smiled and answered truthfully, "It's not that I'm satisfied or not, the system didn't give me any other options." Han Bing coughed lightly and asked again, "Do you think this identity is better than an ordinary passenger? I may have to wait until I have experienced the mission before I can give an answer." Zhao Sun shrugged innocently, "I can't judge now." Han Bing was silent for a moment before speaking again. "Please open the door for me, I'm leaving." Zhao Sun didn't ask any more questions, and got up to open the door of the box. Han Bing controlled the electric wheelchair to walk out. When she reached the door, she looked back at Zhao Sun again, but didn't say anything. Zhao Sun closed the door of the box again, his eyes narrowed slightly. "I always feel that Han Bing seems to have something to say, and what she said is not what she wants to express most in her heart. Perhaps it is the restriction that prevents her from speaking, or it may be that she does not trust him, and is still in the testing stage. But it is not difficult to judge from Han Bing's behavior that the assistant conductor and the conductor are not completely of the same mind. Otherwise, Han Bing would not have to wait until the God of Death leaves to tell him those things. However, the God of Death should also be aware of this. Han Bing just stayed like this, and did not leave with the God of Death. It is impossible for the God of Death not to have any doubts. It feels like this is something that Death and Han Bing know. Therefore, Zhao Sun is more inclined to believe that this discord is not a conflict between players, but a problem with the game settings. It is very likely that the relationship between Deputy Train Captain and Train Captain is not just a relationship of superiors and subordinates, but there is also some hidden checks and balances. After all, the existence of the identity of Deputy Train Captain is more special than that of Train Captain. Han Bing may want to test whether Zhao Sun, who also has the identity of Deputy Train Captain, has the same information as her. Unfortunately, Zhao Sun has not found anything special about the Deputy Train Conductor. Maybe he has not appeared yet? We can only wait and see patiently. January 4th. Midnight. Without any warning, Zhao Sun, who was sitting on the bed ready to go, suddenly disappeared from the compartment. In just a blink of an eye, Zhao Sun found himself standing next to a building, hiding in the shadows where the searchlight could not reach. He immediately looked around and confirmed that this was a blind spot for the surveillance, and then carefully looked at the surrounding environment. He quickly entered the mission state, and adapted very well. This should be the place where the leaders of District 20 live. After all, his mission is to kill all the top leaders, and he can't teleport him to an irrelevant place. According to his idea, directly blowing up this area is the fastest solution. However, there is no guarantee that there are no tunnels for escape in these buildings, and the buildings themselves are likely to have super strong defense capabilities. The required explosive energy is very high. The most important thing is that he must first determine who are the top leaders. In case some people do not live here for various reasons, he must determine their location to facilitate hunting. Well, we still need to find out how many people there are in the top leadership, and who they are. This question should be known by all leaders in the leadership. Zhao Sun thought about it, used beast transformation to turn into an ant, and climbed up the wall. The security measures here must be of the highest level. Infrared cameras are basic equipment. As long as you walk out of the blind spot of the surveillance, you will be captured by the surveillance. But a small ant, even if it is seen, will not attract any attention. And the ant is very small, and it can easily get into the gaps of the window or the door. Soon, Zhao Sun got into a room through the window. He crawled along the wall to the soft carpet, and hid in the curtains. Then he turned into a mouse. After increasing his night vision ability 5-fold, he quietly poked his head out, and looked at the situation in the house. There was a person lying on the bed, already fast asleep. Apart from that, there was no one else in the room. Zhao Sun increased his hearing 5-fold again, and determined through the sound of his heartbeat that there were 4 people guarding outside the door. Even when he was sleeping, there were guards. It seemed that the person in the bedroom was an important character. Maybe he was one of his targets. Zhao Sun looked up at the roof again, but did not find any surveillance. The owner of this bedroom was obviously a person who valued privacy. I think that people of such status would not dare to install hidden cameras in the room at will. Zhao Sun quickly ran to the bed, climbed up the bed along the bed legs, and then turned into a 10-pound mouse, standing on the other person's chest and jumping in the posture of a mouse. The middle-aged man soon felt the discomfort of oppression coming from his chest from time to time, and woke up in a daze. He subconsciously reached out and touched it, but his hand touched nothing, but he could feel that the heavy object had been moved away. At this time, he was not fully awake, and his movements were only instinctive. He instinctively raised his neck, opened his eyes, and looked in the direction of the heavy object. Just like that, he unexpectedly met the eyes of a big rat. The middle-aged man didn't even have time to react, and the big rat's eyes had already lighted up slightly. Then, the middle-aged man's eyes became distracted. "Don't resist in any way," Zhao Sun said in the middle-aged man's ear. "You must answer all the questions I ask you truthfully, and you can't hide anything. When you speak, you must speak softly, so that people outside can't hear." The middle-aged man agreed to all of them. After thinking for a while, Zhao Sun added, "You now feel like your body is like a stone, completely unable to move. Only your mouth can be used to answer my questions. Apart from that, you can't do any physical actions." The middle-aged man repeated Zhao Sun's words, indicating that he had received hypnotic suggestions. Zhao Sun repeated these instructions 3 more times to strengthen the effect of the instructions and avoid the situation where the middle-aged man tried to resist the instructions in the middle. After making full preparations, Zhao Sun began his interrogation. Soon, he had a lot of useful information. There were a total of 20 leaders in the top leadership of District 20, and these leaders had a total of 180 direct subordinates, which together constituted the top leadership. In other words, Zhao Sun wanted to kill these 200 people. In this place, only 20 leaders had the right to live in, and their direct subordinates lived in the residences they purchased. But everyone has more than one residence, and only a few people around them know where they live. Tonight, there are only 11 leaders living here. Among the other 9 people, 6 of them went to other districts to participate in various meetings, and 3 may have gone to their own secret residences. In general, Zhao Sun can only kill 11 leaders here tonight. The others have to look for them elsewhere. Zhao Sun unlocked the middle-aged man's mobile phone with his finger, and learned the appearance and basic information of 20 leaders from the photos on the mobile phone. In order to make it easier to remember, he marked the key information with text on the corresponding photos. As Zhao Sun expected, the middle-aged man was one of the 20 leaders. The middle-aged man had 10 direct subordinates, and the corresponding contact information was found in his mobile phone. Although the number of direct subordinates was small, and their locations were scattered, it should not be difficult to find out their residences in the name of the direct leaders. It's just that this matter must be done as soon as possible. Once it's delayed for a long time, the survivors will definitely be alert and change their hiding places. If these people knew that their leader was dead, it would be impossible to get their residence in the name of the leader. After thinking for a while, Zhao Sun said to the middle-aged man, "Think about it. What excuse can you use to hold a meeting to gather all your 10 direct subordinates tonight?" The middle-aged man thought seriously for a while, and then whispered, "Then, there is only..." Zhao Sun interrupted the middle-aged man before he finished speaking. "Just send a message or call your 10 direct subordinates according to the reason you think of, and ask them to gather immediately. Choose the place where you usually hold meetings. No matter what reason they find, they must invite people out." After speaking, Zhao Sun lifted the hypnotic command of the middle-aged man's stiff limbs. Chapter 334. Have you 2 completed your mission? The middle-aged man nodded, and according to Zhao Sun's instructions, he posted a message in the group of 10 direct subordinates. Soon, all 10 people replied received. Zhao Sun took the middle-aged man's mobile phone and gave him the last instruction. "At 6 o'clock this morning, you will send everyone away, avoid all possible obstacles, go to the kitchen to find a knife, and stab your own heart accurately and without hesitation. No matter what happens, it can't stop your determination to commit suicide. You will not tell anyone about your intention to commit suicide, and you will not leave this room before you carry out the suicide action." The middle-aged man's face showed a look of struggle and fear. Obviously, the fear of death made it difficult for him to obey Zhao Sun's instructions unconditionally as easily as before. Zhao Sun patiently increased the strength of his mental power, deepened the hypnotic effect, and kept repeating the same instructions. After 10 times, the middle-aged man's struggle and fear completely subsided, and he only murmured and repeated Zhao Sun's instructions. Zhao Sun showed a satisfied look. He tried it, and found that the middle-aged man's mobile phone could be put into the storage compartment, so he easily turned back into an ant and went to other rooms. He quickly found the bedrooms where the remaining 10 leaders were. In the same way, he hypnotized these 10 leaders, and asked them to find reasons to gather their direct subordinates to meet at the old place. Then he took the mobile phones of the 10 leaders, and gave them the order to commit suicide at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning before leaving. After he dealt with all the 11 leaders here, the 10 subordinates of the middle-aged man finally sent new messages in the group. Zhao Sun opened his mobile phone and took a look. The 10 direct subordinates had arrived and asked the middle-aged man when he would arrive. Zhao Sun flipped through the chat history of the middle-aged man and replied soon according to the middle-aged man's habit. Then he turned into an ant and crawled out of the room. He climbed up the outer wall, walked to the blind spot of the surveillance, and quickly turned into a peregrine falcon. After increasing his flying speed and night vision ability by 5 times, he flew at the highest speed towards the place agreed by the middle-aged man. The night vision ability of the peregrine falcon is extremely poor. After the 5-fold increase, it is still no problem to see the outline of the building below. The old place of these 11 leaders is not far from this base. Some people even have the same gathering place, but the room number is different. Of course, it was a good thing for Zhao Sun, as he could catch several groups of people in one fell swoop without having to go to 11 places. It would take him more than 40 minutes to drive from the base to where he was going. But if he flew there, he wouldn't have to worry about traffic lights, nor would he be divided by buildings and take detours. Flying in a straight line would save a lot of time. In addition, the peregrine falcon's speed was 300 kilometers per hour, which increased 5-fold to 1,500 kilometers per hour. It only took him 3 minutes to successfully reach the agreed location. Zhao Sun lowered his flight altitude, looked at the name of the restaurant, and confirmed that the location was correct. He turned into a mosquito and flew quickly into the building. This is a high-end restaurant. It looks closed on the surface, but the basement is still open. After passing through the dark hall and flying to the stairwell, he saw 2 people dressed as security guards guarding the door of the stairwell. He went in through the crack of the stairwell behind them, and there was a door next to the stairs. This door was made very delicately, with a painting as the door panel decoration, which also covered the crack of the door, so that people could not see that there was a door here at all. Zhao Sun knew how to get in here through the middle-aged man's description. He squeezed in through the gap of the picture frame, then flew down the stairs, and soon entered the basement restaurant. There were 5 spacious private rooms inside. Tonight, 4 of them were open for business, because 4 of the leaders met with their direct subordinates here. Zhao Sun approached the door panel, saw the room number clearly, and got into room 3 from under the door. In order to protect the privacy of the guests, it is naturally impossible to install cameras in the rooms. The lights in the box were bright, and 10 people in formal attire were sitting around a round table. Although the table was filled with various dishes, no one picked up their chopsticks. The people next to them were discussing something in a low voice, and they seemed to be guessing why the leader asked them to meet at this time. In this atmosphere, Zhao Sun turned back into a human. Everyone was shocked. Some stood up subconsciously, while others stepped back instinctively, and everyone had a look of doubt on their faces. Their eyes were fixed on Zhao Sun, who suddenly appeared. Zhao Sun took this opportunity, his eyes gleaming, and quickly looked at the 10 people one by one. In the end, no one had time to speak, and they were already controlled by Zhao Sun's psychic ability. Zhao Sun repeatedly hypnotized these 10 people to commit suicide at 6 in the morning after returning home. During the hypnosis, the other 3 leaders received news that their direct subordinates had gathered on their mobile phones. He responded to these leaders one by one according to their customary expressions. After the 10 people in box 3 were hypnotized, he went to the next box. He didn't fly to another location until he successfully hypnotized the people in the 4 boxes. Some direct subordinates waited for a long time, but they didn't dare to complain to their leaders, and even rarely urged them. In the end, Zhao Sun used the same method to hypnotize all the 100 direct subordinates of these 11 leaders to commit suicide. The time was set at 6 o'clock in the morning. After everything was resolved, Zhao Sun returned to the original base. It was nearly 3 in the morning. Zhao Sun hid in a blind spot of the surveillance camera, dug out the canned beef he had treasured before from the storage compartment, and ate it all in one go. Now that he was in the real world, it was not difficult to eat something good, so there was no need to treasure this canned food so much. As for the food from the restaurants before, he didn't eat it. Leaving fingerprints and saliva information was a hassle for him. When he could avoid exposing his identity, he still wanted to try not to expose it. Asterisk at 4 in the morning, Zhao Sun waited for the 12th leader, who came back from other districts. He did not rush to follow them, but waited for a while. 3 more leaders came back one after another. It was almost 5 o'clock in the morning. Zhao Sun turned into an ant and sneaked into the building in the same way as before. When he hypnotized the 11 leaders before, he got a lot of useful information, including 4 leaders will come back between 4 and 5 in the morning. In order not to alert the 4 leaders, who were about to return, he did not let the previous leaders and their direct subordinates die immediately. Although it might not be possible to find out that these people died in time and night, the vigilance of the bodyguards should not be underestimated. If they opened the door every few hours to check on the leaders, the deaths of these leaders will be exposed soon. Once a large number of leaders are found dead, the leaders who have returned will definitely change to a safe place. This is also the reason why he did not choose to let the subordinates come here to meet the leaders. Too many people coming in and out in a short period of time will inevitably arouse suspicion. Zhao Sun successfully hypnotized these 4 leaders and their 35 direct subordinates in the same way. After finishing, it was almost 6 in the morning. Zhao Sun wiped the fine beads of sweat from his forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. After working for most of the night, hypnotizing more than 100 people, all of whom were death commands, his mental energy was greatly consumed. But time waits for no one, he can't rest. These more than 100 people will commit suicide collectively at 6 in the morning. From their death to being discovered, and then to the spread of the news, it may only take about half an hour at most. Taking advantage of this time, he had to meet the 3 leaders who lived in a secret place. If it didn't work, he would eat a piece of unyielding bone to replenish his mental strength. Zhao Sun sent messages to the 3 leaders in the name of the dead leaders. There must be leaders who dislike each other and leaders with close interests in the leadership. Zhao Sun had noted the specific network of relationships in the middle-aged man's mobile phone album. At this time, he sent a message using the mobile phone of a leader with whom he had a good relationship, saying that he wanted to go to the other party to discuss something. The 3 leaders had no doubts at all, and sent the location directly. After all, who could have thought that overnight, most of the top leaders of the 20th district were controlled? Fortunately, the locations sent by the 3 leaders were all in the same place, but the room numbers were different. The so-called secret place was actually a high-end club. These 3 leaders were here, of course, not to do any serious work, but purely for entertainment. Zhao Sun soon came to this club, and used the same method to deal with the 3 leaders, who were fooling around, and their 25 direct subordinates. However, his final instructions to these 28 people were different from the previous ones. He asked them to commit suicide immediately, after he left to avoid more trouble. The deaths of more than 100 people should have been discovered one after another. They would definitely contact the remaining leadership members as soon as possible to determine the location of the surviving personnel and send people to protect them. In this case, one more death counts as one more death. Zhao Sun could not leave them any possibility of survival. After doing all this, Zhao Sun hurriedly turned back into a mosquito and flew out. Before he could fly too far, he already felt that his condition was not good. He immediately chose a small alley without surveillance to land, and turned back into human form. His mental power had been almost exhausted. Since 12 o'clock, he has been using mental power almost non-stop. He was lucky to be able to hold on until now. It was time to take a break. Zhao Sun did not rush to leave. He sat on the ground against the wall, and began to sort out his thoughts. At present, there were 2 leaders who were meeting in other districts, and their 20 direct subordinates left in the leadership. This is the most troublesome part. When the 2 leaders come back, they will definitely know about the deaths of a large number of leadership members. Not only will they change the safety point, but the security level will definitely be raised to the highest level. It will not be as easy to kill them as it is now. However, if before they come back, the Grim Reaper successfully destroys the military base of the 20th district, and the ice also destroys the arsenal of the 20th district, then the protection of the top leadership will be greatly reduced. This is very beneficial to Zhao Sun. Such big things happened in the 20th district one after another. Even if the 2 leaders wanted to hide outside, people in other districts might not be willing to keep them. Most of the leaders died overnight, the military base was destroyed, and the weapons depot was bombed. It is not clear how the murderer did it, or even who the murderer is. The leaders of other districts would be concerned about whether protecting the 22 people would offend the murderer, and whether they would become the murderer's next target. In order to protect themselves, sending the 2 leaders and their direct subordinates back is the wisest choice. Districts originally gathered for profit, and naturally they would disperse for profit. Thinking of this, Zhao Sun took out the mobile phone of one of the leaders from the storage compartment and flipped through the morning news. No news has been reported yet. After thinking for a while, Zhao Sun opened his personal panel and found the communication system mentioned by the Grim Reaper in the corner. He selected the voice mode and said, "Have you 2 completed your mission?" Soon, he received a reply from Han Bing, "Completed." After waiting for a while, there was still no movement from the Death God, so Zhao Sun spoke again, "Death God, have you completed your mission?" After more than 10 seconds, the Death God's voice came over, "Yes." Zhao Sun smiled. "Very good, this way, his next plan will be simple. Have you completed your mission?" Han Bing's voice suddenly sounded, paused, and added, "A shui?" "No." Zhao Sun answered truthfully, "There are quite a lot of people in the leadership, and it will take some time. His mission was more time-consuming than the other two's. The base and the weapons depot would not move, so it might take some time to sneak in, but as long as the infiltration was successful, the destruction would be quick. And the leadership was large in number, and they would not gather together obediently. Killing them was not difficult, but finding all of them was. After thinking about it, Zhao Sun asked another question. How long do you plan to stay in the real world? Since we were already chatting, we might as well finish asking all the questions we wanted to ask. This would save me from having to use the communication system all the time, which would make the god of death annoyed. This is my first time out, and I'm a little confused about what to do. I want you to give me some advice. Zhao Sun's tone was very sincere. In fact, he was not confused about what to do. He just wanted to test how long the god of death and Han Bing would stay in the real world. He had more than 200 days of survival time, so it would be no problem for him to stay in the real world for half a year. As for how long he would stay, he hadn't decided yet. I usually stay for a week and then go back. Han Bing had no intention of hiding anything, and directly told his plan. I see what I feel like. The god of death also gave his answer, but it was as good as saying nothing. Before Zhao Sun could ask any more questions, a pop-up window suddenly popped up in front of him. He immediately closed the communication system, looked at the text on the pop-up window, and raised his eyebrows slightly. Chapter 335 Unexpected Event. Player Xiaohong uses Princess's Prince Pendant to summon player Zhao Sun to help her. Having not received help messages from Princess's Prince Pendant for a long time, Zhao Sun thought that Amu and Xiaohong were both dead. Now it seems that at least Xiaohong is still alive. She is quite capable to have persisted until now. However, it is a bit troublesome to ask him for help at this time. Just when Zhao Sun had this thought, the text on the pop-up window scrolled, and a few new lines of text appeared. Since player Zhao Sun is not in the endless train at this time, and the level of the current mission is higher than that of player Xiaohong, player Zhao Sun can perform reverse summoning with the help of the special item Princess's Prince Pendant. Note 1. This method only consumes player Xiaohong's special item summoning opportunity, and does not consume player Zhao Sun's summoning opportunity. Note 2. Using this method, player Xiaohong's dream game will end directly, no points will be deducted, and no more points will be obtained, but the next time you enter the dream game, the game will not be repeated. Does player Zhao Sun choose reverse summoning? Yes. No, Zhao Sun chose yes without hesitation. This is a choice that has no disadvantages for Zhao Sun, so he has no reason to refuse it. Moreover, Xiaohong's appearance now is really great for him. Xiaohong replenishes mental power without any side effects, which is better than the special item Unyielding Bones. This is exactly what he needs most now. A few seconds later, a woman appeared beside Zhao Sun. Compared with the first time they met, Xiaohong has lost a lot of weight. Although she is not skinny, she is no longer that slightly fat body. Her hair was still short, but she had obviously trimmed it herself. Apparently her haircutting skills were terrible, the ends of her hair were uneven, and it looked like it had been gnawed by a dog. Xiaohong blinked blankly, as if she still didn't understand what was going on. But when she saw Zhao Sun, she subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. With Zhao Sun there, it at least proved that she had succeeded in using the special item. Then, she should be safe for the time being. After breathing a sigh of relief, Xiaohong felt her legs and feet go limp, and she fell to the ground powerlessly, and for a while she couldn't get up. She turned her head, and looked at Zhao Sun, who was sitting next to her. She cried and laughed, and couldn't say a word for a long time. She had never used this special item, just thinking that when she could rely on herself, she would try to get through it by herself. After all, this was the only chance to ask for help, and she couldn't use it easily. She wanted to live long on the endless train, and she had to rely on her own strength. There was only one chance to rely on others. So, even if she failed to complete the task in the dream game before, and had to go through it again for the second time, she didn't think of using this special item. But this time it really didn't work. Not only was she unlucky enough to merge the dream game with two players at the same time, but the danger in this game was too great for her to resist. If she hadn't been sure that she would most likely die based on her strength, she wouldn't have been willing to use up her only chance to seek help off-site. Zhao Sun made a gesture to silence her, lowered his voice, and said to Xiaohong, "It's not safe here, you better not make any sound." Xiaohong immediately took a deep breath, controlling her emotions to avoid crying or laughing out loud. After a while, Xiaohong finally calmed down a bit. Zhao Sun then simply told Xiaohong about the current situation. Of course, he still couldn't reveal a word about the deputy conductor. But if he said the conductor's subordinates, there would be no problem at all. After hearing this, Xiaohong asked in disbelief, "So I am now back to the real world? It should be only temporary." Zhao Sun said his guess, "Your current situation is special, and you should receive a system prompt. The system will tell you how long you can stay in the real world." As soon as Zhao Sun finished speaking, a pop-up window appeared in front of Xiaohong. After she saw the content clearly, she took the initiative to tell Zhao Sun the content on the pop-up window. "How much time I have left in the dream game this time, how long I can stay in the real world at most. But if I choose to help you complete your task, I will immediately return to the endless train after your task is completed. How much time do you have left in the dream game?" Zhao Sun asked this question. "It should be about 37 hours. Xiaohong replied. "If you help me complete the task, what benefits will there be?" Zhao Sun asked again. Since the system proposed such a thing, there should be some benefits to attract Xiaohong. Otherwise, if he completed the task within 2 hours, Xiaohong would have to return to the endless train in 2 hours. Xiaohong might not be willing to do so. After finally returning to the real world, according to normal people's thinking, they always want to go back to their own home, visit relatives, or see the place where you used to live. This is human nature. If there is not enough inducement, no one wants to leave right after arriving without having time to do anything. "Yes," Xiaohong answered truthfully, "if I help you complete your task, I can get a certain amount of points and survival time. This is not divided from your points, but given to me extra." Hearing this, Zhao Sun laughed. "This condition is very good, you should not refuse it, right? Well, I have chosen to agree." Xiaohong also smiled at Zhao Sun, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you. This result is a pleasant surprise for me. No need to fight to the death with the other 2 players, and no need to worry about the same task next time entering the dream game. Moreover, helping Zhao Sun can get points and survival time rewards, which makes up for the problem of not being able to get points and survival time after suddenly coming out of the dream game this time. She couldn't think of a better result than this. You don't have to thank me, it's your own luck." Zhao Sun smiled and said, "Give me some mental energy first, I really need you now." Xiaohong responded and raised her hand to touch Zhao Sun's temple. Soon, Zhao Sun felt a warm current flowing from Xiaohong's fingertips to his temple, and then quickly moved to his brain. Mental fatigue and the dull pain in the brain after overconsumption of mental energy were slowly disappearing. Zhao Sun took a breath and finally had extra energy to think about what was happening at the moment. From this unexpected incident, at least one thing is certain. Performing tasks in the real world is more important than any task in the survival game. It is so important that it can even reverse the effects of special items, and even issue additional tasks and rewards to players. When has the system ever been so generous? From this, 2 more points can be inferred. First, the ultimate goal of the behind the scenes of the endless train may be to destroy the world, or to change the world's pattern according to their own wishes. The existence of survival games may be that the behind the scenes cannot act directly, and have limited control, so they can only use this method to gradually influence the outside world. On the other hand, it may be that they are using this cruel game to find players who are strong enough to be used by the behind the scenes. Second, special items are made by the behind the scenes of the endless train, and their specific functions can be changed within a certain range when necessary. This range should not violate the purpose of the special item itself. Otherwise, if the mission in the real world is so important, the system could have completely ignored Xiaohong's request for help, instead of giving him another option to summon Xiaohong in reverse. This undoubtedly created trouble. Let a player who is not qualified to know more inside information find that the player still has to perform the mission when he returns to the real world. This is definitely not what the behind the scenes wants to see, otherwise the mission in the real world would not be a secret known only to the conductor and deputy conductor. The system gave Zhao Sun this choice. It only means that the purpose of special items can only be changed to a certain extent without violating the original purpose. It is good news that it cannot be changed drastically or completely beyond recognition. But even so, special items have uncertainty. If one day he goes against the behind the scenes, or even wants to kill the behind the scenes, the effect of special items can be fatal to him as long as it is weakened. Of course, this is just the worst case scenario he expected. In fact, it may not develop to that point. However, this also sounded a warning bell for him. He should not be too dependent on special items. Fortunately, he was not dependent in the first place. Half an hour later, Xiaohong wiped the sweat from her forehead and said to Zhao Sun embarrassedly, "Your mental capacity seems to be much larger than before. I have given you 95% of my mental power, but I have only made up less than half of your capacity." She sighed, "I have tried my best. I must keep the remaining 5% of mental power for myself, Otherwise my state will become very weak. Xiao Sun came back to his senses, and he smiled at Xiao Hong. It's okay. Then he said, but I want a hair from you. I hope you can agree. Xiao Hong was a little confused, but she still had some trust in Xiao Sun, so she didn't ask too many questions. And she knew very well that Xiao Sun was willing to ask her, which was very polite to her. Otherwise, with Xiao Sun's strength, it would be easy to snatch it away directly. So Xiao Hong didn't hesitate, and took the initiative to pull out a hair, and handed it to Xiao Sun. Thank you. Xiao Sun took the hair and thanked her politely. Then he said to Xiao Hong, my task can be completed in 2 hours if I'm fast, and half a day if I'm slow. You probably won't have time to go home to visit your family. Xiao Hong was stunned and sighed helplessly. I understand. I don't need your help next, Xiao Sun said again. You are free for these few hours. After saying that, Xiao Sun turned into a sparrow and flew onto the roof. Xiao Hong was surprised to see Xiao Sun's back disappearing into the darkness. She didn't remember that Xiao Sun's special ability was to turn into an animal. Although she had doubts in her heart, Xiao Hong didn't delve into it. She didn't want to explore things beyond her ability. The more she knew, the faster she would die. So, don't think about it. Xiao Hong stood up, patted the dust off herself, and decided to find a breakfast shop and have a good meal. Her steps were brisk. Xiao Sun said that during this period, she was free. It was this sentence that made her feel more relaxed than ever before. She got rid of the tension and fear in the survival game for a short time, and really relaxed, without worrying that she might die at any time. At this moment, she was indeed free. On the other side, after Xiao Sun flew onto the roof, he did not fly away immediately, but turned back into a human form. In his hand, he held the hair that belonged to Xiao Hong. He put it to his lips, and pursed it for 2 seconds, and a pop-up window that he had not seen for a long time immediately appeared in front of him. Congratulations on obtaining the Special Ability Spiritual Supply Station LV5. Current Swallowing Level LV5. Can have 10 abilities at the same time. Please select the ability to cover. Gold Control LV4. Resurrection Rage. Beast Transformation LV5. Fire Control LV3. Evil Spirit LV5. Invalidation. Spiritual Power. Water Power. Teleport. Lightning Power. Looking at it, only teleport is not that important. A moving distance of 50 meters is quite useful at critical moments. But compared with Spirit Supply Station, its importance is not on the same level at all. With Spirit Supply Station, he has an endless energy station. So Xiao Sun chose Blink. Spirit Supply Station LV5 covers Blink. Due to the ability effect of Devouring, the effect of Spirit Supply Station LV5 is increased 5-fold, but it cannot be upgraded. Please click on the details for details. Xiao Sun clicked on the details and took a look. Spiritual Supply Station LV5 replenish others' spiritual power, 1-to-1 or 1-to-many, and can only consume up to 95% of one's own spiritual power. Exceeding this will cause harm to oneself. Absorb others' spiritual power to replenish oneself, 1-to-1 or 1-to-many, and can only absorb up to 80% of one's own spiritual power capacity. Exceeding this will cause harm to oneself. Absorb others' spiritual power to replenish a third person, only 1-to-1, and can only absorb up to 50% of the other person's spiritual power to replenish the third person. Exceeding this will cause harm to oneself and cannot be converted. You can interfere with the mental state of others by injecting part of your own mental power into others. 1-to-1 or 1-to-many is possible. The duration and interference effect are determined by the difference in mental power between yourself and the other party. Note, within 48 hours, if you exhaust your mental power and replenish it more than twice, it will cause irreversible damage to your body. Please use your ability reasonably. After getting a 5-fold increase, according to the upgrade direction of this special ability, the changes are as follows. Replenishing mental power for others, 1-to-1 or 1-to-many is possible, and you can consume all your own mental power. Absorb other people's mental power to replenish yourself, 1-to-1 or 1-to-many, and you can replenish until your own mental power capacity is full. Absorb other people's mental power to replenish a third person, 1-to-1, 1-to-many, many-to-many, and it can be converted 100%. You can interfere with the other person's mental state by injecting part of your own mental power into others. 1-to-1 or 1-to-many. The duration and interference effect are determined by the difference in mental power between yourself and the other party. For non-players and non-humans, you can also absorb all their mental power to replenish yourself. Note, if you use up your mental power and replenish it more than 5 times within 24 hours, you will feel physically tired due to excessive use, and you will fall into a short coma in severe cases. Please take proper rest. Chapter 336, They really spent a lot of money. After reading the detailed introduction of Spirit Supply Station LV5, Zhao Sun was in a very good mood. After the fivefold increase, the restrictions of this special ability have been reduced a lot, and the side effects have also been greatly reduced. As long as it is not emptied and refilled more than 5 times within 24 hours, there will be no coma. And his own mental capacity is very large. For him, the probability of side effects is not high. What's more, he still has unyielding bones as a backup. If his mental power is really consumed in a short period of time, he can hold on for a longer time. Zhao Sun turned back into a sparrow and flew towards the original base. It was already daybreak now, and he couldn't turn into a bird that was too special and flew around, which would easily attract attention. Sparrows, a small bird that can be seen everywhere, are more suitable. As for choosing to go to the original base, he knew very well that the remaining 22 targets would definitely not return there, but many leaders died there, and at this point, the personnel who organized the investigation should have gone there. The military base and the weapons depot were destroyed, and the personnel and weapons that the 20th district could mobilize would be greatly reduced. Then, sending the top bodyguards, who are still alive here to reinforce the team would be the most appropriate choice. Even if these bodyguards fail to protect their respective bosses, they should be the strongest protectors that District 20 can find the fastest in terms of strength. Then, it is most likely to get information about the location of the 22 targets from these people. Zhao Sun quickly returned to the base, and it was indeed a mess inside. The bodies have been recovered, but there are several people surrounding each crime scene. They should be people from the forensics department collecting possible clues around. In several rooms, the base personnel were being interrogated. Bodyguards, security guards, and chefs were all waiting in line for interrogation. The bodyguards were at the front of the line. Obviously, after being cleared of suspicion, these people had to go to the next work location. According to the information Zhao Sun had obtained yesterday, one of the 2 remaining leadership groups would return around 11 o'clock this afternoon, and the other would be around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The time they return should not change, because people in other districts would not be willing to let them stay longer, but the place of stay might change, and the means of transportation might also be different. It is hard to say whether they will go by water, land, or air. They came back very close to each other. It would be best if they all landed in the same place, otherwise they would have to fly back and forth again. Soon, several bodyguards were cleared of suspicion and walked hurriedly out of the base. Zhao Sun found the right time and hypnotized everyone after they got in the car. After some questioning, it was confirmed that one of the leading groups would go by water and land at the largest port in District 20. The port has already started to clear out people. No matter whether it is a ship or a person, if they do not have a special ID, they are not allowed to approach, otherwise they will be shot on the spot. These bodyguards are responsible for going to the port to recruit people. Zhao Sun gave these bodyguards a few more hypnotic instructions, and then he flew back to the base. After a while, he noticed that several more bodyguards drove away, but the direction was completely different from the previous ones. So he hypnotized these people again. It was confirmed that the other leading group would take the air route and land at a military airport in the 20th district. Because it was originally a military airport, there were no outsiders at all. It only needed to strengthen the defense and clear the area within a radius of dozens of miles outside the airport. No external vehicles or external personnel were allowed to approach. It can be said that the safety factor is extremely high. At least under normal circumstances, in the minds of ordinary people, this is very safe. After Zhao Sun determined the specific location of the military airport, he gave several hypnotic instructions to the bodyguards, and then he flew quickly towards the port. The leadership group that landed at the port will arrive around 11 o'clock this afternoon. According to the chronological order, he had to go to the port first. This place is far away from the port. Flying at the speed of a sparrow, it is not known whether it can reach the port before the leadership group lands. Zhao Sun flew to a deserted place, and after turning from a sparrow into a peregrine falcon, he increased his flying speed and vision 5-fold, flew high into the sky, and flew towards the port. Half an hour later, he arrived near the port. At this time, there was less than an hour until 11 o'clock. Zhao Sun knew that he couldn't linger here, even if he was just a bird. For the people in District 20, the large number of deaths of the leadership made them extremely nervous. In order to ensure 100% safety, even if an animal entered the area they were guarding, it might be eliminated. If he just flew by, it would be fine. Once he hovered in the sky, it would definitely arouse vigilance. Even if these people didn't think that the murderer could turn into an animal, and didn't think a bird would be a threat, they would choose to kill the animal under such high pressure. Therefore, Zhao Sun quickly flew over the port, flew to a distance over the sea, and then plunged directly into the sea. The moment he entered the sea, he turned into a great white shark, quietly lurking in the sea. 50 minutes later, a warship appeared from a distance. Zhao Sun immediately used fire control to conjure dozens of extremely sharp spears, stabbing straight at the bottom of the warship. Samadhi true fire cannot be extinguished by ordinary water, so the weapon formed by this flame can freely shuttle through the water without even feeling any resistance. The firepower of Samadhi true fire was not comparable to that of ordinary flames, and it was aimed at the engine and propeller. It hit the target with one strike. Those flame spears followed the holes in the warship and went up, directly poking the back half of the warship into a sieve. Soon, explosions sounded one after another inside the warship. It all happened too quickly. In 2 or 3 seconds, half of the warship was destroyed, and no one had time to react. When they realized what happened and were ready to escape, those flame spears had already drilled into the other half of the warship that was still intact like a spirit snake. Soon, the entire warship was burning from the inside out. Some unlucky people were pierced by the flame spears and turned into firemen in a few seconds. At the same time, Zhao Sun used water power to stir up huge waves, and in a flash, the already dilapidated warship was turned upside down. Even if someone had a chance to escape, they would fall to the ground and lose consciousness because of this sudden change. Zhao Sun overturned the warship several times, and then used the flame spears to poke the warship into a hornet's nest many times before stopping. He submerged in the water and slowed down for 30 seconds. He had just used water power, but it was not enough to overturn the sea, and he had restrained the range of the waves, so the burden on his body was minimal. However, he had consumed too much mental energy in an instant, so he had to slow down. After a short 30 seconds, he felt that he had recovered, so he quickly jumped out of the sea and turned into a seagull. He flapped his wings, followed the countless holes in the warship, and struck several waist-thick lightning bolts towards the inside, splitting the entire warship apart. While doing this, he glanced at the port. The rescue boat over there had just sailed from the shore to the sea area where the incident occurred. All this happened too quickly. Counting the 30 seconds that Zhao Sun took a break, only 1 minute had passed in total. Even if those people were well trained, they would not have been able to rescue in time. Especially when they did not notice anything unusual and were not mentally prepared at all, how could they react in time? I am afraid that most people still don't know what is going on. Zhao Sun did not stay for long and flew away quickly. Anyone would notice the unusualness of using such a huge lightning just now, and would immediately notice the seagull he turned into. Even if they did not know the specific situation, even if they could not imagine that the seagull was transformed from a human, they would not leave the seagull alone. And once he was targeted, the process of him turning into other animals would also be noticed, and he would expose himself faster. The defense level of the military airport should be so high that even all animals could not get close. Therefore, he could not transform into other animals at this time, nor could he stay here any longer. However, with his 3-hit combo of water, fire, and thunder, it was unlikely that anyone would come out alive from the warship. Of course, if someone was really that lucky, it would not matter. The bodyguards who were hypnotized by him would find a chance to inform him of the location of the survivors, and he would go to finish them off. Zhao Sun was thinking, when he suddenly felt all the feathers on his body stand up, and a sense of crisis arose. He turned his head, and saw a tracking missile flying towards him. Zhao Sun. They really spent a lot of money to use this thing to shoot a seagull. When Han Bing destroyed the weapons depot, couldn't he also destroy the weapons assigned to the various departments in the 20th district? He actually left such a thing behind. The system should deduct points from Han Bing. Zhao Sun complained while flying vertically towards the sea. At the moment, when the tracking missile changed its position, he released a very small lightning behind him. Lightning quickly triggered the missile to explode. At the moment of the explosion, Zhao Sun dived into the deep sea. In the form of a sea turtle. He increased the defensive ability and diving speed of the turtle shell by 5 times, and with the inherent defensive effect of the sea water, he dived into the seabed very quickly, and finally was not injured by the aftermath of the explosion. At that time, he was very close to the missile. From the perspective of those people, he could not escape. At least a seagull could not escape. Let those people think he was dead, so that his next action would be more convenient. Zhao Sun swam for a distance and surfaced only after he was sure that he was beyond the scope of the spy. He turned back into a peregrine falcon and quickly rushed to the military airport. It was a secret place that most people didn't know about. It wasn't even marked on the map app, let alone navigation. But this was not a problem for Zhao Sun. When he questioned the bodyguards before, he had already figured out the specific location and marked it on the electronic map. Relying on the bird's sense of direction, there was no problem at all, and there was no need for navigation at all. After more than 40 minutes, Zhao Sun finally flew to the military airport. This airport was built on the top of a mountain. The entire mountain was bombed flat, forming a very spacious and flat airport. Because of the high altitude and being on the mountain, it has a natural defensive advantage, and ordinary people cannot approach it at will. There are few people around, and it is also easy to monitor. Whenever a strange face appears, it will be noticed immediately. However, it is difficult for birds to attract too much attention. Therefore, Zhao Sun, who turned into a peregrine falcon, sneaked into the middle of the mountain very smoothly. It was nearly 12 o'clock, and there was still an hour until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Zhao Sun found a tree to rest on, observing and looking for a suitable ambush site. Time passed by minute, and at 12:43 minutes, the roar of an airplane sounded in the sky. This group of leaders returned early. Zhao Sun used the good eyesight of the peregrine falcon to quickly determine that there was only this one plane. The plane was not large, but it should not be a problem to accommodate 20 people. Through the window, you can even see the leader's face clearly. There was no difference from the photo. It was just that the only leader still alive looked haggard and nervous. The people around the leader were all his direct subordinates, and everyone had a solemn look on their faces. Even though they were about to land, they did not show a trace of relief. Zhao Sun flew high and quickly confirmed that all 10 direct subordinates were there. So, he raised his wings and pointed to the sky without hesitation. Several lightning bolts as thick as arms struck the clouds, and the clear sky suddenly became gloomy, and dark clouds gathered quickly. Zhao Sun did not stop, and continued to send lightning to the clouds to trigger the thunder. Soon, he felt his brain nerves begin to twitch. At this time, a thunderclap resounded throughout the mountain. Zhao Sun immediately controlled the thunder to attack the plane. The power of the thunder is incomparable to ordinary thunder and lightning, with a faint power to destroy the world. In just one blow, the plane was blown in half, and fell into the valley at a high speed, like a kite with a broken string. Immediately afterwards, a burst of explosion sounded in the valley. All this happened in just a dozen seconds. The people in the airport had no time to defend themselves, and the people in the plane had no time to save themselves. Everything was a foregone conclusion. Zhao Sun left the airport quickly without any hesitation. He could no longer maintain his animal form for too long, and had to leave here as soon as possible to avoid being exposed. The fivefold amplified thunder power could trigger thunder and cause natural disasters, but the side effect was that the body would bear a great burden, and it would take at least 3 days of rest to recover. Normally, he would not use this move easily. However, this is the last wave. A quick battle is worth it. Just as Zhao Sun was thinking this, a pop-up window suddenly popped up in front of him. Congratulations to player Zhao Sun for successfully completing the real-world mission. Kill all the top leaders of the 20th district. Receive 1,000 points reward. Chapter 337 District 10. January 4th. Afternoon. 3 o'clock. XX Homestyle Restaurant. Zhao Sun ordered a table of home-style dishes: braised pork, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, shrimp and broccoli, pickled fish, mapo tofu, minced pork with beans, and green pepper potato slices. After a quick meal, he ate everything up. He felt that he hadn't had such a comfortable meal for a long time. Although he could occasionally eat a few good meals in some survival games before, it was different from eating in the real world. Even though the dishes here are home-cooked, he likes them very much. After eating and paying the bill, Zhao Sun found another hotel to check in. He went to the pawn shop before and exchanged a mid-range gem for tens of thousands of yuan, so he doesn't have to worry about food and clothing in the near future. Fortunately, he had foresight and took away all the jewelry that could be taken away in the game of Rabbit Kingdom. If he sold all of them, he would be a billionaire at least now. However, he was not in a hurry to cash in all of them, because the future was uncertain. Zhao Sun used the room card to swipe the door, entered the room, and lay down on the bed. He really felt very tired now, and his head still throbbed from time to time. But the side effects were much better than he thought. In addition to the headache, his limbs were a little weak. Normal walking and regular body movements were no problem, but he could not lift heavy objects. Perhaps because the thunder he caused was only in a small area, the impact on the world was not great, so the side effects were not great. He felt that at this level, he should be able to recover after resting for half a day, and it would not take 3 days. No matter how long he had to rest, it didn't matter, because his mission was already completed. The system messages were all out, and he didn't need to pay attention to any news anymore, and he could be sure that the 200 leaders were all dead. Zhao Sun was in a good mood and admired his personal panel. It was indeed a highly valued real-world task, and the points reward for one task was 1,000. Of course, this was also due to his fast completion of the task. It only took him 13 hours to kill the 200 top leaders. Even if Death and Ice were to do it, they might not be as neat and fast as him. Therefore, the maximum points for this mission should be 1,000. At this rate of accumulating points, he can complete 3 more real-world missions and accumulate 4,000 points, which can be exchanged for train conductor. However, to become a train conductor, he must fight the Death. He has no intention of fighting the Death for the time being, and even if he has enough points, he is not in a hurry to exchange for train conductor. Moreover, at present, becoming a train conductor also requires returning to the endless train from time to time, and there is no obvious advantage compared to deputy train conductor. Why should he spend 4,000 more points? Zhao Sun thought as he took out his mobile phone and looked at the news. He had already thrown the mobile phones of those leaders in the forest of the military airport. The upper management must have discovered that the mobile phones of the leaders who died in the base were missing. In order to prevent information leakage, they would definitely change the contact information. It is unlikely to get internal information through these mobile phones. Moreover, the mobile phone may be isolated from positioning in the storage compartment. Once it is taken out of the storage compartment, as long as it is turned on, it will be located 100%. He had kept his phone before, just in case there were still some fish that slipped through the net, so that he could contact the hypnotized bodyguards. But after the mission was completed, there was no need to keep the phone. Otherwise, if his location was located, even if he could escape smoothly, his personal information would be exposed. This series of things was done in a covert manner, and it was impossible to trace it back to him. Especially the 11 leaders who died in the highest base, and their subordinates scattered everywhere, all committed suicide, and it is likely to become an unsolved mystery in the end. Then it would be even more impossible to trace him. He didn't need to leave these phones and ask for trouble. Zhao Sun casually looked at the news to see if there were any related reports. The result was no. The upper echelon should try to suppress public opinion as much as possible for such news that caused unrest in the entire 20th district. But all the leaders were gone, unrest was inevitable, and it was only a matter of time before the news leaked out. Without a leader, it was easier to cause chaos, and it was even more difficult to cover up the news. Zhao Sun really wanted to see who had the courage to stand up at this time and take on the role of new leader. After all, the leadership of 200 people died in one day, which must have caused panic among the people. It is likely that they would speculate that the new leader could easily become the new target of the murderer. If no one dared to stand up at this time, then the 20th district would soon become chaotic. Thinking of this, Zhao Sun suddenly became curious about the 7th district, 8th district and 18th district that had been paralyzed by the god of death. According to the god of death, these 3 districts have fallen into a paralyzed state. It seems that they have been destroyed beyond recognition, and everyone is in danger, and there is no unity within these districts. But the Grim Reaper did not describe what had happened specifically, and he was very interested. Thinking of this, Zhao Sun searched for information about these districts again. There should be information barriers between districts. When searching for information about those districts in District 20, not much could be found. Basically, it was in chaos, with no one to manage. Several surrounding districts were eager to annex these 3 districts, and regional wars would break out from time to time. The accompanying pictures showed the poverty and misery of the people in those districts. Without the constraints of order, crime became rampant, and the first to suffer would definitely be the honest and decent ordinary people. Starvation was the norm, and being beaten to death for a piece of bread was not uncommon. But no more in-depth reports were available. Whether there was assistance, whether a new force was formed, etc., all of these were unknown. Zhao Sun thought for a moment, and decided to wait until his body recovered, then go back to the 10th district, and then go to the 3 districts. January 5th. 12 noon. Zhao Sun checked out of the room, went out for a hearty lunch, and then found an empty corner, turned into a peregrine falcon, and flew quickly towards the 10th district. Although the 20th district is far from the 10th district, and flying consumes a lot of mental energy, it is better for Zhao Sun not to use public transportation. After spending more than 6 hours, Zhao Sun finally entered the airspace of the 10th district. As a bird, he is not within the scope of monitoring, so he flew smoothly to the community where his adoptive parents once lived. After flying for about an hour, he finally saw a familiar building. With a dive, he landed safely. Zhao Sun stood in the yard of a two-story building. This is the home of his adoptive parents. His adoptive parents are not rich, and they can afford this two-story house because it is located on the edge of the slums in the 10th district. The house prices here are cheap, but the environment is not good, and the public security is worrying. This house should have been robbed by several groups of people. The door lock of the courtyard door was broken, and the window of the master bedroom was also smashed. Through the broken window, you can clearly see that the closet doors and drawers inside are open, and the mattress has been turned upside down. As you can imagine, the other rooms are not much better. However, there is nothing valuable in the house, so Zhao Sun is not worried about anything being stolen. It's just, this place is already so messy, it may not be suitable as a burial place for his adoptive mother. At least not until he can return to live here. Zhao Sun entered the room through the broken half-open window, and looked at the familiar furnishings in the room. It was only a few months later, but it seemed like a thing of the last life. Memories kept flashing in his mind. He didn't feel the kind of sad emotions described in the book, but he could feel that he missed the days with his adoptive parents. Although not rich, it was warm. Well, emotionally, it should be a kind of spiritual abundance and happiness. Unfortunately, he was born with a lack of emotion, and it was difficult for him to empathize with most ordinary people, and he didn't have intense emotional outbursts. However, rational analysis can infer the emotional pattern at this time, and it is also clear whether these emotions are good or bad. All the rooms in the house were turned upside down. Even the kitchen and bathroom were not spared. The lid of the water tank behind the toilet was opened. There was indeed nothing valuable in the house, but many things were still lost. The toiletries in the bathroom, the oil, salt, sauce, and vinegar in the kitchen, and the quilts and pillows in the bedroom were all looted. The only people who could do such a thing were the residents of the slums not far away. That was the poorest place in the 10th district, and also the most chaotic place. Many people lack food and clothing, and naturally they also lack thick and warm quilts in winter. No one has entered or left this house for several months, so it naturally became the best target for most poor people. As for why those people don't live here directly, it's also easy to guess. People in the slums are branded, and you can tell at a glance that they are from the slums. This place is not within the scope of the slums. Once it is discovered that people from the slums live here, they will be directly judged as occupying someone else's house. No matter what the reason, others can report to the higher authorities, and the fate of the poor is to be shot. So, they can steal or rob supplies from other areas, but they must return to the slums as soon as possible, otherwise they will die. Zhao Sun was not angry because these daily necessities were stolen, but he was a little unhappy that the house was turned upside down. It will take a long time to clean it up. If one day, he can completely get rid of the control of the endless train and return to the real world, he still wants to live here. There weren't many places in the world worth his nostalgia, and this was the only one. Even if he had more money, he just wanted to live here. But he was very unhappy with the mess here. At this moment, Zhao Sun suddenly heard hurried footsteps coming from outside. The footsteps were very fast, and they walked towards the small building without hesitation. Zhao Sun stood at the stairs on the second floor, listening carefully to the movement downstairs. They were two men of similar age, and judging from their conversation, they should be a pair of brothers. "Brother, is what you said true?" The younger brother's voice was not loud, obviously not wanting to attract the attention of nearby residents. "This community is going to be razed and rebuilt?" "Of course it's true." The elder brother's voice was also low, but it was still audible in the quiet house. "Didn't I recognize a big brother recently?" He has acquaintances above him. It is said that in 3 months, several connected communities near the slums will be razed and rebuilt. New houses? The younger brother was a little puzzled. The slums and the area near the slums have never been taken seriously. Why are they suddenly being rebuilt? "You wish." The elder brother laughed at himself. "How could the place where people like us live be renovated? They are planning to move all the heavily polluting factories here." The younger brother realized something and laughed sarcastically. "So that's how it is. I thought for a moment that we could improve the environment a little bit here. I really wish too much. Anyway, this place will be demolished soon, and we have to take away all the materials we can collect." The elder brother bent down to look for something and said to his younger brother, "Once this place becomes a factory, we won't be able to come here as we please. Our living environment will definitely be worse in the future." The younger brother sighed. "It's not enough to lack supplies, we have to endure environmental pollution. What will happen to the children in the slums in the future? Let's talk about the future later." The elder brother is more open-minded than the younger brother. "It's good for us to live well now. We may not live long enough to have children in the future." The younger brother was silent for a moment, and finally couldn't help asking, "Brother, what are you looking for? I found a valuable thing in this room before, but there were many people around, and I was afraid that someone would rob it, so I hid it here first." The elder brother explained in a low voice, "This place will be demolished soon, and the things must be taken away quickly, otherwise they will be cheap to others." Xiao Sun upstairs heard this, quickly took out the chameleon cloak from the storage compartment, put it on himself, and went downstairs quietly. The elder brother was lying in the corner of the living room, groping on the floor, and said to his younger brother, "It was dark at the time, and I was too anxious. Now I can't remember where the thing is hidden." "What is it?" The younger brother approached his elder brother and asked, "Brother, tell me, I will help you find it." At this moment, the elder brother said, "Ah," and stretched his arm into the deepest part of the wooden board. "I found it." At this time, Zhao Sun was already standing very close to the two brothers. He tilted his head slightly, and looked at his brother's hand. My brother took out something wrapped in a dirty handkerchief, and when he opened it, there was a gold ring inside. When he saw the ring, Zhao Sun remembered. This was his adoptive mother's only jewelry. Because it was bought when his adoptive parents got married, his adoptive mother cherished it very much, and was reluctant to wear it. She kept it well. Only on New Year's Day and wedding anniversary would his adoptive mother wear it. Chapter 338 Special Powers. As for where his adoptive mother usually hides the ring, Zhao Sun doesn't know. He never thought of getting his adoptive mother's jewelry, so he naturally didn't pay attention to where the ring was hidden. Last September, when he decided to board the endless train, he didn't think of finding the ring. Unexpectedly, the two brothers found it. With this, our family won't have to worry about food and clothing for a while. The elder brother carefully wrapped the gold ring in a torn handkerchief and prepared to put it in his pocket. At this moment, Zhao Sun took off his chameleon cloak. The elder brother was frightened by the person who appeared out of nowhere, and the handkerchief in his hand fell to the ground. The younger brother, who had his back to Zhao Sun, didn't understand what was going on, and asked his elder brother what's wrong while turning his head to look. When he found Zhao Sun, the younger brother was also shocked. However, the two of them didn't have time to do anything, and they were hypnotized by Zhao Sun. Zhao Sun walked over, picked up the ring on the ground, and put it in his pocket. Then, he hypnotized his brother. "I am a new friend of yours. For some reason, you must take me to meet the elder brother you know. As for the reason, you don't care and don't want to ask more. You just know that you must let me meet your elder brother." The brother murmured and repeated Zhao Sun's words, and soon accepted the order. Zhao Sun said again, "Only you and I know this matter. You will not mention it to anyone except your elder brother, even your family." The elder brother nodded without any hesitation to show that he understood. Zhao Sun looked at his younger brother again. "I am your elder brother's new friend. He brought you here today to introduce me to you. Although we have only met once, you trust me very much and have no guard against me at all." The younger brother frowned slightly, but he quickly accepted the hypnotic instruction. For those of them who grew up in the slums, being arbitrarily controlled by outsiders is the norm. In order to survive, changing their own ideas according to the wishes of others has almost become a survival instinct. Therefore, it is easier to hypnotize them. Finally, Zhao Sun hypnotized the elder brother and the younger brother to forget about the gold ring, and then the brothers were released from hypnosis. When the brothers came to their senses and looked at Zhao Sun again, they were no longer as frightened and nervous as before. "I suddenly remembered that I have something very important to do." The elder brother looked at Zhao Sun and asked, "I have to ask you to meet my elder brother. When are you free?" "I am free anytime." Zhao Sun smiled and said, "Why don't you call your eldest brother and ask him when he is free?" "That's right, I asked now." The elder brother took out an old brick phone from his trouser pocket and dialed a number. When he pressed the answer button, he subconsciously walked to the corner, turned his back to Zhao Sun and his younger brother, and humbly said some nice words to the person on the other end of the phone. A minute later, the elder brother hung up the phone and said to Zhao Sun, "Tomorrow at noon, the eldest brother will treat us both to dinner." "How did you convince him to meet me?" Zhao Sun asked. "You are my brother." The elder brother patted his chest and said with some pride, "I said you also wanted to join my camp and follow my lead. My elder brother is in need of people recently, so he agreed very readily." "I see." Zhao Sun nodded and said, "Then come here to pick me up tomorrow, and I will go with you." "Okay." The elder brother agreed readily, waved to Zhao Sun, and left with his younger brother. Watching the two brothers leave the house, Zhao Sun's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't want the house to be demolished and built into a factory, because his adoptive mother wanted to return to her roots. His adoptive mother was separated from her family due to the war when she was very young, and she had never found a relative before she died. His adoptive mother didn't know whether those people were still alive. This place became his adoptive mother's only route, and it was full of memories of his adoptive parents, so it was most appropriate to bury her here. This was his adoptive mother's only wish, and he would do all the aftermath work for her. Therefore, he had to hypnotize all the people in charge of this project and let them give up the project. The process was a bit troublesome, and he had to find people one level at a time. But he had plenty of time now. January 6th, 10 o'clock in the morning. The elder brother of the two brothers came to find Zhao Sun. He took Zhao Sun to a massage shop on the other side of the slum. This massage shop was not in the slum, but in a commercial street 500 meters away from the slum. The elder brother led Zhao Sun upstairs of the massage shop and walked into the box that looked the largest and most presentable. As soon as the door opened, a smell of poor quality tobacco hit me in the face. Zhao Sun frowned slightly, but said nothing. There were 5 women dressed up in the box, and in the middle of these women sat a man covered in tattoos. The man's neck and cheeks were tattooed, and only on his forehead could you see some human skin. Brother, the elder brother walked up to the tattooed man and bent over. This is the new brother I told you about. The tattooed man took a puff of his cigarette, looked up at Zhao Sun, and looked him up and down. You don't look strong enough, he said with a little disdain. I want a thug, not a pretty boy who only looks like he can pick up women. Zhao Sun didn't give the tattooed man a chance to say more nonsense. His eyes lit up slightly. The tattooed man's eyes instantly became dull. Get these women out, Zhao Sun said to the tattooed man in a calm tone. The 5 women looked at Zhao Sun in surprise, obviously not expecting Zhao Sun to dare to speak to the tattooed man like this. Although Zhao Sun's tone sounded normal and not bossy, the tattooed man was the boss here, and everyone who spoke to him was polite, even humble. Such a normal tone, as if talking to a peer, was a sign of disrespect to the tattooed man. The women subconsciously cast sympathetic eyes at Zhao Sun, feeling a little sorry that such a good-looking man would probably be beaten up with blood on his face later. As soon as these women had this thought, they heard the tattooed man say, "You guys go out first." The women were all stunned. No one expected such a result. The tattooed man was not angry, and even listened to Zhao Sun's words and let them go. Is this a sudden change of character? Although they were puzzled, the women did not dare to ask more questions and got up and left. Zhao Sun waved to his brother, "You go out too." The brother glanced at the tattooed man, and seeing that he did not object, he left the box conveniently and closed the door considerately. Zhao Sun then walked up to the tattooed man and began to hypnotize him, asking who the higher acquaintance the tattooed man knew was, and asking him to introduce him. In this way, it took another 3 days for Zhao Sun to finally find the main person in charge. His position was much higher than he expected. He was actually a member of the top leadership of District 10. For the upper class, moving a heavily polluting factory to a slum was not a big deal, and it was usually handed over to the people below to be responsible and supervised. But this time, the person in charge and supervision was actually a member of the top leadership. Moreover, it was not a direct subordinate of a certain leader, but the leader himself. Zhao Sun intuitively felt that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. However, his goal was to make District 10 completely give up the idea of demolishing that community. As for what complicated intentions those leaders had, he didn't care. The result was that what he wanted was okay. However, this level of leadership, even if introduced by people below, was not something he could easily meet. Therefore, he had to change his approach, find out where the leader lived, and sneak in. January 10th. 6 o'clock in the evening. Zhao Sun successfully sneaked into the villa where the leader lived. The leadership structure of the 10th district and the 20th district is similar, but there is no base for leaders to live together like the 20th district. The leaders of the 10th district each have their own mansions, and they can live wherever they want. However, no matter where they go, there are at least 30 bodyguards guarding them. Of course, for Zhao Sun, these bodyguards cannot become an obstacle to him. At this time, the leader had not returned yet, so Zhao Sun hid in the study. According to what he had heard, this leader was used to going to the study room to deal with and summarize the day's affairs before going to rest after returning home. There was no exception. Therefore, waiting in the study room was a good choice. In order to avoid being hacked and monitored, there were no cameras installed in the study room. After Zhao Sun crawled in through the crack of the door with the body of an ant, he turned back into a human form. The process of waiting was always boring, so he casually looked at some information on the desk. With the bright moonlight outside the window, he could barely see the words on it. It was about volunteers. Zhao Sun immediately became interested. He looked at the content carefully again. It turned out to be the candidate list for volunteers in February. It was only the beginning of January, and they had already started looking for volunteers for next month. The leaders of District 10 really started preparing long in advance. The candidate list was not long, with only 8 people in total. With so few candidates, the number of people selected in the end would be even smaller. It seems that the consumption over the past year has caused a serious shortage of talents in the 10th district. Zhao Sun put on disposable plastic gloves and reached out to take the information to look through it. There are even 2 people from other districts on this list. They were deceived in the name of academic exchange. Importing talents from other districts is indeed a good choice. On the one hand, it can make up for the quality problem of volunteers and increase the hope of solving the endless train a little bit. On the other hand, it can also reduce the number of talents in other districts. In case the endless train can never be solved, it can also prevent the 10th district from being destroyed by the endless train, while other districts are thriving. However, this kind of cheating is not a long-term solution. Presumably, the leaders of the 10th district should be considering a more reasonable cooperation plan. Zhao Sun put down the information in his hand and did not read it again. It is hard to say how long these volunteers can live after boarding the endless train, so he does not need to remember them. Moreover, he cannot reveal any information about the endless train to any non-players in the real world. Even if he meets these volunteers in advance, he cannot communicate. This is not what he cares about. Just take a look. Zhao Sun turned his eyes to the desktop computer on the desk. He only cares about the land where his adoptive parents' house is located. Tonight, he only needs to control this leader and change all the records in the computer. At least in the next few years, he doesn't have to worry about the problem of demolition. A few years later, when the policy changes or the leadership power is transferred, he will hypnotize again. Zhao Sun sat cross-legged on the carpet, waiting boredly. Who knew that before the leader came back, a fresh pop-up window appeared. Deputy Train Conductor's special power. Monitor train conductor's behavior in the real world. When train conductor is found to have rebellious intentions, deputy train conductor can cross the line and kill train conductor, directly replace him as the new train conductor, and get all the points of the former train conductor. Zhao Sun raised his eyebrows slightly. It seems that Han Bing should have received this message before. Previously on the endless train, Han Bing's test of him was to find out whether he also had this special power. This special power still has a certain appeal. No need to spend another 4,000 points. You can become the new train conductor by directly killing the God of Death, and you can also get all the points of the God of Death. It is much better than the conventional way to become a train conductor. However, killing the God of Death is a difficult task. Although I don't know why this special power suddenly appeared at this time, at least Zhao Sun can be sure of one thing. The Grim Reaper must have had a rebellious heart, and the mastermind of the endless train has noticed it. To put it bluntly, all the players are just chess pieces of the mastermind. For a person who controls the game, ordinary chess pieces are not scary at all. Unless this chess piece makes the mastermind feel threatened. Therefore, the Grim Reaper should have some useful information, such as the true identity of the mastermind or the weakness of the mastermind. In short, there must be some secret or secrets that the behind-the-scenes are afraid of. Otherwise, they would not give Deputy Train Conductor such special power. This made Zhao Sun very interested. He was not a person who would just accept things, so he naturally could not be controlled by the behind-the-scenes of the endless train. If the God of Death really knew the secrets of the behind-the-scenes, or even the weaknesses, he would not want to kill the God in order to become the train conductor. After all, the enemy of the enemy can be a temporary ally. After things here are settled, he will try to see if he can meet the God of Death in the real world. Just as Zhao Sun made this decision, he heard the sound of a car horn downstairs, and then the gate outside the villa opened. He stood up, walked to the window, and took a look. It was the leader's car. It was already 8:30 in the evening, and the person he was waiting for finally came back. Chapter 339 Liao Family. Zhao Sun transformed his ears into beasts and amplified them 5 times. Even in the soundproof study, he could hear the noise outside clearly by approaching the door. 10 minutes later, a regular sound of footsteps came. There were about 5 or 6 people in the group. Soon, they arrived at the door of the study. The person in the front was entering the password, while the other people lined up on both sides of the study door. Obviously, they were bodyguards, ready to guard the leader outside the door. When the leader opened the door, Zhao Sun had already hidden behind it. When the leader closed the door, Zhao Sun was exposed in front of the leader. But the leader had no time to react at all, and was hypnotized by Zhao Sun. At Zhao Sun's signal, the leader locked the door. Then, the two came to the desk together. Bai Weiyuan is not allowed to be demolished. Zhao Sun went straight to the point. No matter what the reason or situation, Bai Weiyuan is not allowed to be demolished. District 10 has never had a policy of giving a large amount of money for demolition, or in other words, there is no such subsidy for ordinary people. Even if they were to arrange accommodation, they would be arranged in a more remote and dilapidated community. The costs and losses incurred in the process would all need to be borne by themselves. Therefore, no one was willing to be demolished. However, most ordinary people were incapable of resistance, and it was useless not to compromise. If the news that Bai Weiyuan would not be demolished was suddenly announced, all residents in the community would be very happy. The leader frowned slightly, and it was obvious that he was subconsciously dissatisfied with Zhao Sun's proposal, but he still modified the relevant policies and documents according to Zhao Sun's wishes. Then, he turned on the computer, changed all the relevant information, and notified the message. After doing all this, the leader turned to Zhao Sun and asked, "Then the polluting factory cannot be moved to the vicinity of the slums as planned. Just don't move it." Zhao Sun paused here and asked, "Where are those polluting factories now?" The leader turned on the electronic map on the computer and pointed to Zhao Sun. "Here." Zhao Sun took a closer look and found that it was downstream of the river, and there were no residential houses around, which minimized the harm to humans. He asked, "Isn't this location quite suitable? Why do we need to move? This place has been requisitioned." The leader replied, "We are going to build an experimental base." "The experimental base is built in such a heavily polluted area?" Zhao Sun frowned. "What kind of experiment? An experiment to purify polluted air and water? Or an experiment to extract pollutants and make biological weapons? This area is full of heavily polluted factories that are very harmful to the human body. There must be some special reason for building an experimental base here, right? Considering two aspects. One is an experiment for future healthy development, and the other is an experiment that cannot be seen in public. These are the two possibilities he can think of." "I don't know." The leader shook his head. "This matter is top secret. Only the head of the Liao family knows the details. We are only responsible for helping him complete this project." Zhao Sun raised his eyebrows slightly. The Liao family is well known in the 10th district. The head of the Liao family is also a member of the top leadership, but his status is more special than other leaders. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is the boss among all the leaders. Since this matter is led by the Liao family, it is even more complicated. The most important thing is that even if the leader in front of him changes the plan, as long as the Liao family asks to maintain the original plan, no one can stop it. Zhao Sun made a decision almost instantly. He wants to meet the head of the Liao family. Other things have nothing to do with him. He is too lazy to care, but Bai Weiyuan cannot be demolished. Zhao Sun asked the leader to check the recent schedule of the head of the Liao family directly through the internal network. After thinking of several ways to approach the other party, he asked the leader to delete the browsing history. After watching the leader delete all the records, Zhao Sun suddenly asked, "Can you check the information of all the volunteers in the past?" The leader answered truthfully, "Of course." Zhao Sun immediately said, "Then check the volunteer information in August 2023. The leader obediently searched and quickly opened the information. Zhao Sun looked at them one by one and quickly locked on a person. In the photo, the face was not much different from when he first saw it, but there was no longer that kind of tired and exhausted look in his eyes, not like a person who was tired of living. It was the woman nicknamed Silk Scarf. Zhao Sun pointed at the photo of Silk Scarf and asked the leader, "Who did this person replace to become a volunteer?" The leader subconsciously looked at Zhao Sun. The moment their eyes met, the question the leader wanted to ask suddenly disappeared, and he answered truthfully, "It's the son of the Liao family." Zhao Sun showed an expression of as expected. He didn't want to ask about Silk Scarf, but when he heard the leader mention the Liao family, he suddenly thought of what Silk Scarf had said. A family she couldn't afford to offend, and who also had great authority in the top leadership of District 10, this person must be someone extraordinary. The matter of volunteers was very serious, and not just anyone could change the list. Just having money wasn't enough, and you had to have real power. It was the Liao family, so it was easy to understand. The Liao family was the only large family in District 10, and their power in District 10 was deeply rooted. If the system didn't allow it, they could almost be emperors and nobles in District 10. In reality, the Liao family is not much different from the emperor's nobles. This woman. The leader seemed to have thought of something and shook his head. How pitiful. Zhao Sun came back to his senses and asked, "What do you mean?" She volunteered for the Liao family's son for her mother. The leader's wrinkled face showed some sympathy, but on the 10th day after she boarded the endless train, her mother died. Zhao Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. Not a natural death. No, of course, it was a natural death. The leader denied it immediately. Zhao Sun was silent for a moment, and said in a light tone, "Then, did the Liao family breach the contract?" At this time, the leader could subconsciously say the word pitiful. The mother of Silk Scarf must not have died under normal circumstances. But the leader insisted that it was a natural death. There is only one possibility left. The Liao family promised to provide medical resources to the mother of Silk Scarf, but they did not actually provide them. Without getting better help, accelerated death is inevitable. The leader glanced at Zhao Sun and sighed. Mr. Liao meant that the woman had already boarded the endless train, and there was basically no return. Why spend money to treat a useless person who didn't live long anyway? Even if the woman was lucky enough to come back alive one day, it could be said that her mother was in poor health and could only live for a short time after the rescue, and couldn't make it until she came back. Chapter 340, I didn't expect to meet you here. Somehow, Zhao Sun's mind suddenly popped up the image of Silk Scarf in the survival game. Her face was full of tiredness and boredom, as if she had lived very tired, but she was unwilling to die like this. But at the moment of death, there was a sense of relief. Before the woman died, the only person she cared about was her mother, who had been ill in bed for a long time. She even tried to ask him, the man who killed her, to visit her mother for her. She should have known that the moment she made the choice, the survival game was her death. But at the same time, she also regarded this as her mother's only way out. But in the end, she did not get the result she wanted. As an emotionally indifferent person, Zhao Sun did not have any emotional ups and downs about this matter that had nothing to do with him. However, he could judge how bad the whole thing was. If this happened to him, he would definitely kill the Liao family. The whole family. It has nothing to do with emotions. Those who get all the benefits, but don't keep their promises don't deserve to live. It's a pity that the parties involved are already dead. And as an outsider, he has no reason to do anything for them. This woman's mother is also quite pitiful. The leader seemed to have opened up the conversation and took the initiative to talk about this secret. She didn't know where her daughter went until she died. She was still mumbling her daughter's name before she died, and she didn't get to see her in the end. After a moment of silence, Zhao Sun felt that he still had some questions to ask. He himself didn't understand the reason, but it didn't matter. Ask if you want to ask. There's no need to dwell on it. You know so much about it. Zhao Sun looked at the leader and asked, didn't Mr. Liao cover it up? How could such a thing not be covered up? I know so much about it because I did it for Mr. Liao, and other people definitely don't know about it. The leader waved his hand and said helplessly, to be honest, I don't have the heart to do it, but there's nothing I can do. Who dares to go against Mr. Liao's wishes? I see. Zhao Sun chuckled, you said this to reduce your guilt, or to put all the blame on Mr. Liao. Even if a bad person does something bad, he will inevitably feel uneasy. Once he has the opportunity to tell his story, he can't help but express his sympathy and reluctance to those who don't know the truth, which can not only reduce his guilt, but also gain recognition and comfort from others. Unfortunately, this trick was a waste of effort when used on Zhao Sun. The leader's face froze, with embarrassment and anger flashing alternately. Zhao Sun did not give the leader a chance to refute, and asked another question instead. What is the son of the Liao family doing now? He should be preparing for the experimental base. The leader was affected by the hypnotic instruction and immediately put aside his previous emotions and answered honestly, the newly built experimental base was built by this son of Mr. Liao. Zhao Sun looked at the leader and confirmed, you have no idea what this experimental base is used for? I really don't know. The leader shook his head repeatedly, not to mention me, I'm afraid other leaders in the leadership don't know the details. The only ones who know the inside story should be the Liao family. In other words, this experimental base is equivalent to the Liao family's private base. Zhao Sun concluded. You can also understand it this way. When the leader said this, his eyes unconsciously revealed a trace of dissatisfaction. The Liao family is almost the only one who has the final say in the 10th district. Even if the resources of the entire 10th district are used to do things for their Liao family, few people dare to say a word. It can be seen that the leader is also dissatisfied with the behavior of the Liao family. Who doesn't want to get closer to his position, but the Liao family is always suppressing him, so it's normal to be unwilling. However, this is not what Zhao Sun cares about. After confirming the new target and asking all the questions he wanted to ask, Zhao Sun ordered the leader to forget that he had been here tonight, and he left quickly without staying. Taking advantage of the night, he went to the Liao family's old house. According to the information he found before, Mr. Liao will rest in the Liao family's old house tonight. Zhao Sun doesn't like to wait. When the time is right, he will act immediately. The old house of the Liao family is built in a mountain. The road to the mountain is very flat, and there are street lights all the way. The safety of driving is not a problem at all. The whole mountain belongs to the Liao family. Except for the Liao family, others can't easily go up the mountain, because there are guards at the foot of the mountain. Iris authentication is required at the door of the mansion. But these are not a problem for Zhao Sun. He turned into a bat and flew to the top of the mountain. Zhao Sun found a tree trunk with a good view in the bushes outside the gate of the Liao family and landed. He looked around to check the guards and surveillance. The defense system of the Liao family's old house is the highest level in the entire 10th district. In addition to the guards at the door, there are also patrol robots. The door alone is so tight, not to mention the interior. Of course, these things are not obstacles to Zhao Sun, but he vaguely sensed that there was something else, so he stopped to check the situation. After a long silence, Zhao Sun finally discovered something unusual. Several beams of red light spread out from the depths of the woods without warning, turning into a large net that quickly covered the entire Liao family mansion. This red light is invisible to the human eye, but Zhao Sun can see it because he has now become a bat that can sense infrared rays. But this red light is not like ordinary infrared rays, and Zhao Sun can feel the unusual energy fluctuations in it. When the entire Liao family mansion was covered, the guards patrolling outside the gate fell to the ground one after another, and the robots also stopped working. Immediately afterwards, Zhao Sun heard a rustling sound coming from the bushes behind him. He turned his head and saw an uninvited guest approaching the Liao family's old house at a very fast speed. Zhao Sun thought for 2 seconds and flew in front of the other party. The man paused, and before he could react, he saw the bat in front of him turned into a human. A Shui. The other party's voice was cold and carried an undisguised murderous intent. What a coincidence. Zhao Sun seemed not to feel the other party's hostility and greeted with a smile. I didn't expect to see you here, the god of death. Hearing this, the hand of the god of death paused slightly, and he asked Zhao Sun, you happen to appear here? That's not the case. I came here on purpose to find the Liao family. After Zhao Sun answered, he smiled at the god of death again. It seems that your purpose is the same as mine. The god of death pursed his lips slightly and said nothing. Not denying is equivalent to acquiescence. Zhao Sun said again, however, from your reaction, you seem to think that I followed you here? The god of death did not intend to continue chatting. He walked past Zhao Sun and strode out. Zhao Sun thought of the spreading red light and the reactions of the guards and robots, and saw the Grim Reaper striding forward without worrying about alarming anyone or being seen by the surveillance cameras. He immediately understood. He quickly approached the Grim Reaper and said, it seems that all the electronic equipment here is controlled by you. The Grim Reaper paused, and he tilted his head to look at Zhao Sun, his voice as cold as ice. If you stop me, I will kill you too. Why should I stop you? Zhao Sun asked back. I said, I came here to talk to the Liao family. I don't care why you came here. Death took out a silenced pistol from his trouser pocket and pointed it at Zhao Sun's forehead. Even if you didn't mean to stop me, as long as your actions would delay my business, I don't mind killing you first. Zhao Sun stared at the black muzzle for 2 seconds and suddenly laughed. From Death's reaction, it is not difficult to see that he should know that Deputy Train Conductor has special powers. And Death knows very well that this special power is for Train Conductor. Endless Train couldn't have told Death about this on his own initiative, so Death must have guessed it from Han Bing's various behaviors. Then, Death should know very well that some of the information he has in his hands will make him stand on the opposite side of the behind-the-scenes of Endless Train. Seeing Zhao Sun smile, Death frowned. The next second, he directly opened the safety bolt of the pistol. Why don't you tell me? What secrets have you learned about Endless Train? Zhao Sun still had a smile on his face, and he was not panicked by Death's actions at all. At the same time, his eyes lit up slightly. The Death God's expression was dazed for a moment, but then it returned to normal. You can hypnotize. His tone was firm, but no emotion could be heard. You can resist. Zhao Sun was a little surprised, but his tone was not much different from usual. He did not think that the Death God's mental power was stronger than his, which led to his failure of hypnosis. Unless the other party can also hypnotize, they will have such a strong resistance, otherwise it will be a struggle for ordinary people to resist. There is only one explanation. The special ability of the God of Death, or a special item he possesses, can passively help him release mental control. The God of Death thought for a moment, and suddenly said, I want to wipe out the entire Liao family. If you don't stop me, I will tell you what you want to know after the matter is accomplished. He is not a fool, so he can naturally see that Zhao Sun has no hostility towards him. Moreover, Zhao Sun wants to know the secret of the behind the scenes of the endless train, which means that Zhao Sun is not a person who will just accept it. Zhao Sun also wanted to get rid of the control of the endless train. So on this point, they were on the same front. The god of death did not think that he could get rid of the control of the endless train by relying on his own strength. Although he did not like to cooperate with others, he would not be arrogant. He knew that he needed help from others. In fact, he considered Han Bing at the beginning, but it was a pity that Han Bing had not revealed his thoughts until now, not to mention that he could feel that Han Bing, as the deputy train captain, seemed to have some hidden mission against him. He couldn't easily reveal what he knew. But Zhao Sun and Han Bing were completely different. Although I don't know how Zhao Sun figured out that he had some information about the backstage person of the endless train, it was obvious that Zhao Sun wanted to know more than to silence. Moreover, Zhao Sun had no hostility, which the god of death was sure of. If he could only choose between Zhao Sun and Han Bing, he would definitely choose Zhao Sun. Then take me with you. Zhao Sun suggested, I have something to ask Mr. Liao, and it won't delay your extermination of the clan after I ask, right? After asking, I can also help you exterminate the clan together. I will take my revenge myself, and I don't need anyone else to intervene. Death refused directly. Well, Zhao Sun did not force it, and settled for the next best thing. Before you kill Mr. Liao, please ask him what kind of experiment he wants to do when he builds an experimental base in the polluted factory area. Death looked at Zhao Sun, a little surprised. Build an experimental base in the polluted factory area. He spent the first half of his time in the real world collecting evidence, and the second half observing the Liao family's defense layout, and didn't care about anything else. So, he didn't know about this at all. Isn't it strange? Zhao Sun smiled, and as far as I know, this experimental base is under the sole responsibility of the Liao family, and outsiders don't know the details. I know. The Grim Reaper walked towards the door of the Liao family again. Zhao Sun looked at the back of the Grim Reaper, and didn't speak again. Although he didn't know how the Grim Reaper planned to make old Liao tell the truth, since the Grim Reaper agreed, he should have his own plan. Soon, the Grim Reaper successfully entered the gate of the Liao family's old house. Zhao Sun turned into an owl, found a big tree, sat on the trunk, and waited quietly. Although the Grim Reaper did not reveal any inside information, it was easy to see from his eyes that he had a deep hatred for the Liao family. Combined with what he just learned about the scarf, it can at least be confirmed that the Liao family is not a good thing. As for the specific deep hatred between them, Zhao Sun did not want to ask. He was more concerned about the fact that the Liao family was exterminated, the experimental base could not be built, and the polluting factory naturally did not need to be relocated, and Bai Huiyuan would not face the problem of demolition. This matter is in his favor, so he will not stop the revenge of the god of death. Since he was free, Zhao Sun opened the chat window, and chatted with Han Bing privately. Ashui, Han Bing, have you returned to the endless train? Han Bing, yes. Ashui, it's so late, you haven't slept yet? Han Bing, something? Ashui, the special power of deputy train captain. It was quiet for a while, and then there was movement again. Han Bing, you really received it. Ashui, are you hesitating whether to do it, or do you want to invite me to act with you? Han Bing, what about you? Ashui, I don't have any idea for now. Han Bing, me neither. Seeing this line of words, Zhao Sun paused. No idea. If it is true, did Han Bing test him before just to know what he thinks and take it as a reference? Shouldn't you make your own decision on this matter? What's the point of taking others as a reference? If you want to cooperate with him, you shouldn't do that. There can only be one conductor. If two deputy conductors kill the conductor together, they will most likely have to kill one of them to determine the new conductor. No matter how you think about it, you can only do it by yourself and make the decision by yourself. I don't understand women's minds. Just when Zhao Sun was about to close the chat window and end this conversation, the other party suddenly sent a few new messages. Han Bing, I won't live too long. If train conductor can't make me live 100 years, becoming train conductor is meaningless to me. Han Bing, but there is no evidence that train conductor can't live a long life. Ashui, you should ask the god of death. Han Bing, even if I ask, he may not tell the truth. Ashui, is this why you are hesitant and don't know whether to act or not? Han Bing, yes. If the action fails, she will die. If the action succeeds, the conductor cannot make her live 100 years and die after living for a period of time. If the action succeeds, the conductor can make her body recover and live a long life like an ordinary person. According to this probability, the possibility of longevity is less than 50%. Before knowing the exact answer, she dare not act easily. But she couldn't trust the answer given to her by the god of death. Therefore, she fell into a dead end. When she knew that a new deputy conductor appeared, she couldn't help but want to pin her hope on him. Perhaps the other party could give some useful suggestions, because they were in a difficult situation, even though she knew that it was not a wise choice to rely on others. But what else could she do? She had no other choice. Han Bing stretched out his slightly cold palm and gently stroked his chest. Every beat of her heart is a countdown to her life. And she has always been afraid of death. A line of text suddenly appeared in the semi-transparent chat window in front of her. Han Bing took a look and felt a chill in his heart. Shui, I don't think being a train conductor will have the benefit of longevity. Han Bing, why? Shui, do you think the person behind the endless train is so kind? Shui, train conductor is a higher status than passenger, but he also has to perform tasks. But the purpose of the task is different from that of other players. Shui, if train conductor has such a great benefit of longevity, the train rules should specifically mention it, so that it can attract everyone's enthusiasm to accumulate points, and players can actively participate in more survival games. Shui, but the part about train conductor in the train rules does not say that he can live a long life. Shui, moreover, train conductor living a long life is equivalent to giving a player too much power for a long time. I don't think the people behind the scenes want to see this result. Looking at the lines of text sent by Zhao Sun, Han Bing felt that his heart was getting colder and colder, and even his heartbeat seemed to slow down. But intellectually, she knew that Zhao Sun's analysis was correct. Slowly exhaling, Han Bing finally replied. Han Bing, then, there is no need for me to become a train conductor. Shui, do you want to do something meaningful? Shui, the length of life cannot be controlled, but the degree of life's brilliance can be controlled by oneself. Han Bing, what suggestions do you have? Shui, after deputy train conductor returns to the endless train, can he still choose to go to the real world on his own? Chapter 341 The Master, and the Man Behind the Scenes. The answer is yes. As long as the conductor is still in the real world, the deputy conductor can choose to go to the real world again even if he returns to the endless train. The survival time will be deducted as usual. But if the conductor is no longer in the real world, then the deputy conductor can only wait until the next mission in the real world appears before he can leave the endless train. This way of returning to the real world will allow the deputy conductor to appear next to the conductor. So under Zhao Sun's suggestion, Han Bing decided to return to the real world the next day, which was January 11th. At that time, Han Bing's appearance would not interfere with the death god's genocide, avoiding unnecessary conflicts. Of course, Zhao Sun did not say the specific reason, and Han Bing did not ask more. After chatting with Han Bing, a violent explosion suddenly sounded in the distance. Zhao Sun closed the chat window and looked up. I saw that the old house of the Liao family was filled with flames. No matter how good the external defense is, there will always be loopholes when attacked from the inside. The Liao family was obviously unprepared. After the explosion, a minute later, various shouts gradually came. In those voices, emotions were mixed, panic, fear, anger, all could be heard. Zhao Sun tilted his head and observed. Although there were many shouts, no one ran to the door for a long time. It seemed that the god of death had used some unknown method to block the escape route of the people inside. Just when Zhao Sun had this thought, a dark thing suddenly rushed out from the fire and flew straight into the sky. Looking closely, it turned out to be a small aircraft. Judging from its size, it could only hold one person at most. Such a rare escape tool must only be owned by people of high status in the Liao family. As soon as this thought came to mind, a small tracking missile appeared from the fire and chased after the aircraft. The aircraft accelerated and fired a small missile behind it. The two missiles collided and exploded in the air with a dazzling light. The air wave of the explosion made the aircraft tilt for a moment, but it quickly stabilized and flew away at a faster speed. Zhao Sun had already seen clearly the person who was controlling the aircraft. It was the old Liao that everyone often talked about. This old man was quite old, but he was very lucky. He was able to escape. However, the moment he saw the aircraft, Zhao Sun had already guessed it. After confirming the other party's identity, he was not surprised. Zhao Sun aimed at the position in the sky in front of the aircraft, and released a lightning as thick as an arm without hesitation. The moment the lightning appeared, the aircraft just flew there. It seemed that the aircraft took the initiative to send itself into the lightning. Zhao Sun showed no mercy, and used all his strength. Even though the aircraft itself had anti-electricity function, it was still beyond its tolerance, and was broken in an instant. The aircraft fell straight down uncontrollably. The next second, Mr. Liao was ejected from the aircraft, and the parachute opened. Zhao Sun couldn't help but sigh. This old man is really good at surviving. It seems that the lightning just struck the wrong way and only damaged the aircraft, not the person. Although he complained in his heart, Zhao Sun's movements were not slow. He flew out the moment Mr. Liao was ejected. Before Mr. Liao landed, he was caught by Zhao Sun. In order to facilitate his movements, Zhao Sun had changed back to human form and put on the goddess's wings. He attacked from behind, and before Mr. Liao could react, his wrist was grabbed. When Mr. Liao looked back and saw that Zhao Sun had a pair of wings behind him, he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. But he soon realized his situation and immediately took out a pistol from his waist and pointed it at Zhao Sun. "Take me away from here, quickly." Although he didn't know what the purpose of this stranger Zhao Sun was, he had a pistol in his hand, so even if this person wanted to kill him, he couldn't do anything to him for the time being. And the other party had wings and could fly, so this person became the best tool to take him away from here quickly. Zhao Sun chuckled. He looked at Mr. Liao, his eyes slightly bright. "You can't do anything to hurt me." As he said, he successfully removed the parachute behind Mr. Liao. Mr. Liao was stunned, and subconsciously wanted to shoot Zhao Sun to teach him a lesson. But he found that he couldn't move at all. His limbs were not controlled, and he could make any movements without any problems. But once he wanted to pull the trigger, his fingers would not obey. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't press it. This realization made Mr. Liao panic, and he asked Zhao Sun, "What did you do to me?" Before Zhao Sun could answer Mr. Liao's question, he saw the Grim Reaper rushing out of the Liao family's old house. The Grim Reaper quickly climbed to the top of a big tree, looked up at Zhao Sun, and said loudly, "I kill you. No one is competing with you for it." Zhao Sun waved his hand carelessly. He flew towards the direction of the god of death, and said, "However, you probably didn't have time to ask the questions I asked you to ask clearly, right? It's not too late for me to kill you after I finish asking." Seeing Zhao Sun flying in front of him, the god of death glanced at the wings behind Zhao Sun and said, "It's right here." Zhao Sun did not object. He looked at Mr. Liao and continued to hypnotize him. "What exactly is the purpose of your building an experimental base in the polluted factory area?" In order to avoid wasting time, he immediately used the highest intensity of his mental power to promote the depth of hypnosis. Mr. Liao frowned and seemed reluctant to talk about this matter, but he was silent for only 2 seconds, and then he spoke uncontrollably, "Worship." But he only said 2 words and closed his mouth again. It seemed that there was an invisible force preventing him from speaking. When they heard these 2 words, Zhao Sun and the god of death showed surprise. The 2 words experimental base and worship would never be connected together, but Mr. Liao would never lie under hypnosis. That can only mean that the so-called experimental base was not originally intended for scientific research. Doing superstitious things under the guise of scientific research? Zhao Sun asked again, "Who do you worship? Why choose that address?" "Worship the Lord." Mr. Liao's wrinkled face shook uncontrollably for a few times, and then it crumpled painfully into a ball of waste paper, but he still managed to finish his words. "The address is the Lord's choice." Hearing the title of Lord, Zhao Sun almost instantly remembered the dream game he had participated in. Coincidence? No, his intuition told him that it was unlikely to be a coincidence. The special item obtained from the dream game has completely different functions from other special items, which is already very special. Because of the function of this special item, he not only got the special identity of deputy train conductor, but also had the opportunity to leave the endless train and return to the real world. In other words, this special item gave him the opportunity to connect with the real world. Then, the special item itself may have some connection with the real world. In this way, the master mentioned in the dream game may be the master worshipped by Mr. Liao. Even, this master may be the master behind the scenes of the endless train. The Liao family is the absolute authority of the 10th district. The master controls them, and naturally controls the 10th district. The appearance of the endless train, and the transportation of volunteers all have reasonable reasons. But the appearance of the master has nothing to do with any gods or demons that Zhao Sun knows. More like Cthulhu. Thinking of this, Zhao Sun asked directly, "Is the master you worship the master behind the endless train?" The muscles of Mr. Liao's face twitched, and his teeth were clenched tightly. He didn't squeeze out a word from his teeth for a long time. After thinking for a while, Zhao Sun simply changed the question, "Where is the Lord's body?" Mr. Liao's forehead was covered with sweat, and his eyes were full of fear. Zhao Sun repeated the same question again, patiently waiting for Mr. Liao to speak. He knew very well that whether to speak was no longer determined by Mr. Liao's own willpower, but Zhao Sun's hypnosis and the power of the Lord hidden in the dark were fighting, competing for the control of Mr. Liao's brain and mouth. After a long while, old Liao finally opened his mouth. In Liao Temple. After spitting out 3 words with great effort, old Liao's head suddenly exploded without warning. Zhao Sun was sprayed with brains all over his face and had to close his eyes. He took out a clean towel from the storage compartment with his free hand and wiped his face before opening his eyes again. The result was obvious. Old Liao couldn't withstand the pull of the 2 forces and exploded. The brows of the Grim Reaper were furrowed. He should be left to me to kill. It's not that I don't want to leave it to you. If you want to blame someone, blame the master, he mentioned. Zhao Sun handed the headless body of Mr. Liao to the God of Death and suggested in a friendly way, "Why don't you whip the corpse to vent your anger?" The God of Death pulled Mr. Liao's limp arm expressionlessly, looking at the headless body, feeling complicated. He was originally a person loyal to the leader and his mission. He volunteered to be the first batch of volunteers, together with his fiancée. He knew that he might die in there, and his fiancée knew it too, but they were both willing to be pioneers and make contributions to future generations. His fiancée even joked with him that it would be nice to die with the one he loves. This idea was finally shaken until his fiancée died in the game. If his fiancée died under the rules of the survival game, he would have nothing to complain about. But she was killed by her teammates to protect him, because the so-called teammates stabbed him in the back at the most critical moment. He couldn't figure out why, because his fiancée and her teammates died together, and he didn't even have the chance to ask his teammates why they did this. It was not until he accidentally heard about his family from the volunteers, who came in later, that he understood everything. The teammate who stabbed him in the back was a killer sent by Mr. Liao to ensure that he died on the endless train. After he and his fiancée boarded the endless train, his family was suppressed and framed by the Liao family in various ways. All this was just because his existence was about to overshadow the new generation of the Liao family. In order to ensure that the Liao family's position in the 10th district is unshakable, excluding dissidents is their routine operation, but they usually pretend to be good people and deceive too many people who don't know the inside story, including him. In fact, it was the Liao family who deliberately arranged for him to become a volunteer. Even if he did not take the initiative to sign up, he would still be on the list. After he left, the Liao family could not wait to attack his family. Frame-up, assassination, smearing reputation, all kinds of means emerged one after another, not only making his family lose the support of the people, but also making his entire family die. Listening to the ridicule of his family, and the admiration of the Liao family by the later volunteers, and thinking about his fiancée who died to protect him, he felt a splitting headache. The 3 words volunteer are like a joke. Everything he did was a joke. He hated the Liao family, and all the volunteers sent by the Liao family. This hatred, as time went by, not only did not fade, but even made his heart more and more twisted and resentful. So much so that later, any volunteer who tried to get close to him would be ruthlessly wiped out by him. So, when he was able to return to the real world from the endless train, his greatest wish was revenge. But the Liao family's position in the 10th district is unshakable, and their security measures are naturally top-notch. He knew that he couldn't act impulsively. Once he alerted the enemy, it would be difficult to catch them all. So he spent more than 2 months investigating the whereabouts of all members of the Liao family, and figuring out the defense map and security facilities of the Liao family's old house. After summarizing the rules, he could choose a day when most of the Liao family members were in the Liao family's old house, and destroy the scum of this big family, and the old house they were proud of. Now, he finally took action, and the plan was very successful. Even if there were still some members of the Liao family alive, they were all side branches and young people who were not very successful. Most of those who were powerful and influential died in the fire. But the culprit did not die in his hands, and he always felt that there was a void in his heart. There was a kind of regret that I carefully drew a dragon, but failed to add the expressive eyes. The God of Death let go of his hand, watched the headless corpse fall, and said calmly, "There is no point in whipping the corpse." He did not need this kind of psychological comfort. He didn't have such a habit. "Why don't we kill the master worshipped by the Liao family?" Zhao Sun suggested with a smile, and his tone was light as if he was inviting the other party to have tea with him. "Although I don't know what hatred you have with the Liao family, your goal is to wipe out the entire Liao family. Their master is still alive, so it doesn't seem to be a success in exterminating the family." Death looked at Zhao Sun. In the night, under the bright moonlight, He clearly saw the smile on Zhao Sun's face and the seriousness in his eyes. He was sure that Zhao Sun was not joking. Zhao Sun's head tilted slightly, and his smile became more evil. Besides, I think the master worshipped by the Liao family is the master behind the endless train. If we kill him, we may be free. Chapter 342 Cooperation. The death god heard clearly what Mr. Liao said before he died. He had the same guess as Zhao Sun. So, after hearing Zhao Sun's suggestion, the death god agreed without hesitation. Then, the two found a suitable place to land. Zhao Sun notified Han Bing to come over. It happened that Han Bing was still suffering from insomnia. After seeing the news, she rushed to the side of the death god as soon as possible. She glanced at the Liao family's old house that was still on fire in the distance, and her eyes showed surprise. But she quickly calmed down and looked at Zhao Sun again, asking, "Didn't you tell me to come back tomorrow morning? Why did you suddenly change your mind?" "He gets things done quickly," Zhao Sun pointed at the Grim Reaper and said with a smile, "Our cooperation progress has also been a little faster. What do you want to cooperate on?" Han Bing asked again, and without waiting for Zhao Sun to answer, he said, "Please make it clear in advance that I may not accept your cooperation proposal." "I think you will accept it." Zhao Sun smiled warmly. "You probably don't want to work on the endless train for the few lives you have left. If you have the opportunity to get rid of control, you probably won't refuse." Han Bing's eyebrows moved slightly. "Have you found a way to get rid of control? Although it's just a guess, it should be close to the truth." Zhao Sun repeated what Liao Lao said, as well as his and the death god's guess. After listening to it, Han Bing's first reaction was to show a vigilant look. She was not vigilant against Zhao Sun and the death god, but looked around vigilantly. She asked with some concern, "You just said it directly, aren't you worried that the mastermind behind the endless train will hear it?" Zhao Sun had obviously thought about this a long time ago, and he answered without any hesitation, "According to my guess, the mastermind behind the endless train has very little influence in the real world, and its monitoring ability on players is also very limited. We are less likely to be overheard when discussing things here, and even if we are overheard, it is difficult to stop us. In fact, on the endless train, the mastermind's ability to monitor the players is not 100%. Even the mastermind's own ability to act is greatly limited. Otherwise, when he found that the death god was not right, the mastermind should have taken action himself, and would not let the deputy conductor kill the conductor." Han Bing understood. "This is why you want me to come to the real world to discuss the specific content." "That's right." Zhao Sun nodded. "Moreover, while this person behind the scenes hasn't fully grown up, the chances of killing him are higher." "Indeed." Death finally spoke. "He has many restrictions now, and it's obvious that his own strength is not strong enough to do whatever he wants." "Then do you know where the master worshipped by the Liao family is?" Han Bing asked again. "It's not difficult to infer." Zhao Sun turned to look at Death, however. "Before talking about this, I want to hear you say, what else do you know about the person behind the scenes?" Death kept his word and spoke very straightforwardly. "I have seen some strange sculptures in the 7th district, the 9th district, and the 18th district. As the order in these three areas became more and more chaotic, the number of sculptures gradually increased. From some inconspicuous places at the beginning, to everywhere later." At this point, he glanced at Han Bing and Zhao Sun, and then continued, "The appearance of those sculptures should be similar to the special item that made you become deputy train conductor." "Describe it in detail?" Zhao Sun asked with some interest. The god of death was not impatient, and described while recalling, "They are all strange shapes, similar to human figures, but completely different from humans. Just looking at them will make people feel uncomfortable. It's a bit like the uncanny valley effect, but that discomfort is not entirely due to the uncanny valley effect." "Did the sculptures in these areas appear after you destroyed them?" Zhao Sun asked. "I can't be sure," the god of death said rigorously, "but I think it is likely to be so." "So, you actually discovered the existence of the sculptures earlier than me and Shui?" Han Bing asked Death. "Then didn't you suspect that these sculptures were related to the people behind the endless train?" "Of course I suspected it." Death replied. "However, I didn't have enough information at the time, so I just suspected that there was a connection between the two, but I didn't expect the connection to be so deep." Death never asked how Han Bing became the deputy train captain. Until Zhao Sun asked Han Bing, Death knew that these two deputy train captains had received a strange special item, a strange-looking sculpture. It was at that time that he began to suspect that there must be a deep connection between these sculptures and the people behind the scenes. However, at that time, he was more focused on revenge, and didn't spend too much time thinking about other things. "There is one thing I don't understand. How did those sculptures appear in those three districts?" Han Bing raised his doubts, After these districts lost order, the residents' food, clothing, and safety became a problem. It's impossible that they still have the mood to make sculptures? I don't think these sculptures are real sculptures. The Grim Reaper paused for a moment, as if he was a little hesitant, but he still said his guess. They may all be transformed after the people in these districts died. Zhao Sun's mind worked quickly, and he immediately understood what the Grim Reaper meant. If your guess is correct, it may mean that after you destroyed the order of those districts, some bugs formed in these districts, and the person behind the scenes used the bugs to invade that part of the real world. Under the influence of his power, people will become sculptures that look very similar to him after they die. That's what I guessed. Death nodded. The man behind the scenes asked conductor and deputy conductor to return to the real world to perform tasks, thereby increasing his connection with the real world and gradually gaining the ability to control the real world. From the current situation, it is definitely not a good thing for the man behind the scenes to invade the real world. Maybe he wants to destroy the entire world and enslave all humans. Han Bing also followed the thinking of Zhao Sun and Death. This may make the man behind the scenes stronger and stronger. We have to kill him before he grows to be difficult to deal with. At this point, she frowned slightly, a little worried, but with our strength, can we really do it? Zhao Sun did not answer Han Bing's question. He looked at the god of death and asked, "Do you know any other secrets about the mastermind?" If only this was discovered, the mastermind would not have led the deputy conductor to kill the conductor. Knowing this will not have any impact on the mastermind. The god of death must have mastered some deeper secrets or discovered the weakness of the mastermind. The god of death looked at Zhao Sun and smiled for the first time, revealing the dimple on his left cheek, which made him look less serious and cold. I also got 2 pieces of information about the person behind the scenes. He raised 2 fingers and continued. The first is that destroying the sculptures that humans turn into after death can weaken his power. The second is that he has something similar to a heart, which is hidden somewhere, and that may be his only weakness. How do you know this? Han Bing asked the god of death in surprise. Did he ask you to hide it? Of course, I couldn't have hidden it. Death shook his head. The former conductor told me about this. There was actually another conductor before you. Han Bing was even more surprised. She had always thought that Death was the first conductor on the endless train. Zhao Sun was not too surprised by this. As he had deduced before, as long as the players who boarded the endless train early on were always successful, even if they only participated in 3 survival games every month, they could accumulate 10,000 points after a year. To avoid any mistakes, you need to rely on strength and luck. Although the probability is not high, it is not impossible. Yes, the god of death nodded. After I became the train conductor, I received the information that I must kill the previous train conductor to truly become the train conductor. Now that I think about it, perhaps this rule was made to silence people. So, the heart was hidden by the previous train conductor? Zhao Sun raised his eyebrows slightly. Yes, Death replied, but he was banned and couldn't speak directly. Zhao Sun looked at Death's indifferent expression and understood almost immediately, but he left a clue, and you found the target by following the clue. If he only knew this, the person behind the scenes might not want Death to die. But if the location of the hidden weakness was discovered, then the person behind the scenes must want Death to become a dead man who can never speak again. That's right. Death smiled. Although I can't say it, I can take you there. He can say so much, and his actions are not restricted, which can prove that the mastermind has weak control over the real world. As Zhao Sun said, this is indeed a good time to make a move. No wonder the mastermind wants you dead. Han Bing couldn't help but sigh. You have mastered such a big weakness of him. He will never let you live. At this point, she could also see that the god of death should have known that deputy train conductor had a mission to attack train conductor. She has nothing to hide. Now you are the same as me. The Grim Reaper shrugged, not seeming to care too much about his own life or death. Since his fiancée died and his family was destroyed, he has been a pure avenger, even if it means sacrificing his own life. Now that the revenge is over, he is a little confused about his own life. Go to death. This is the life that his fiancée risked her life to protect. How can he give it up so easily? Live? He doesn't know how to live, and what else he can do. The advice Zhao Sun gave him actually gave him a short-term direction and goal. As for the so-called difficulties and obstacles, and the worry about his life, he was not worried. He died for a good cause, and his fiancée would not blame him. In this case, we have 3 directions to do. Zhao Sun raised 3 fingers. One is to destroy all the sculptures in the real world. The second is to find the heart and smash it. The third is to go to the Liao family ancestral hall to find the real body of the mastermind and destroy his body. Liao family ancestral hall? Han Bing was a little surprised. Is the real body of the mastermind in the Liao family ancestral hall? It should be there. Zhao Sun looked at Han Bing and explained, although Mr. Liao didn't finish his last words. The first thing I thought of when he said those words was the Liao family ancestral hall. I thought so too. Death continued, the Liao family needs to worship the mastermind, and it is very appropriate to put it in the ancestral hall. Then where is the Liao family ancestral hall? Han Bing glanced at the Liao family's old house with flames all over the sky. This old house has been burned down. Isn't the ancestral hall in the old house? At this time, the fire alarm finally sounded at the foot of the mountain. Because all the alarm equipment in the Liao family's old house was paralyzed, the fire was not reported until the fire grew bigger and bigger, and the people at the foot of the mountain noticed something was wrong. However, this kind of fire could not be extinguished in a short time, and no one could walk out of the Liao family's old house alive. I know this. Zhao Sun pointed to another hilltop in the distance that could be vaguely seen in the darkness. It just so happens that before I came here, I read some information about the Liao family. The Liao family ancestral hall is at the foot of that mountain. That was where the Liao family lived in the beginning, a small village at the foot of the mountain. After the Liao family became prosperous, they naturally no longer lived in such ordinary houses, but the ancestral hall remained there, and the entire village was also renovated. When the Liao family worshipped their ancestors, they would still return to this original place to express their respect for their ancestors. That's quite close. Han Bing retracted his gaze, looked at Zhao Sun and the god of death, and asked, so do we act now? Although the three did not elaborate on the reason, everyone knew it. The real target is the heart. Only this weakness can truly kill the mastermind. But someone must go to the ancestral hall to confront the mastermind's true body and distract the mastermind's attention. At the same time, it would be best if someone destroys those sculptures to weaken the mastermind's influence and control over the real world. Only after the latter 2 points are achieved can the first point proceed more smoothly. It's better to do it today than tomorrow. The god of death replied. Almost at the same time, Zhao Sun also spoke. Of course, the sooner the better. There are 3 of us, and each of us can choose a direction. Han Bing coughed lightly, and then said to the god of death, you are the only one who knows where the heart is hidden, so you have to go. The other 2. She looked at Zhao Sun. Which one do you want to choose? Before making a choice, I want to bring a few more people over. Zhao Sun looked back at Han Bing. 3 people are too few. 1 person may not be enough to find the heart, not to mention that it is difficult for 1 person to destroy the sculptures in those 3 areas in a short time. The man behind the scenes is not a fool. It is impossible that there is no defense at the place where his only weakness is stored. The weakness of the man behind the scenes cannot be destroyed by ordinary means. All these are variables. It is difficult to control all the variables if only 1 person goes there. You want to find help? Han Bing was a little surprised. We can't reveal anything about the endless train to non-players, including the man behind the scenes and the heart of the man behind the scenes. Can you let people in the real world help you without telling the reason? We don't need those ordinary people. Zhao Sun waved his hand. The more people there are, the better. They will only cause trouble. He restrained his expression and asked seriously, do you have any special items that can bring other players out of the endless train? Han Bing and Death were both stunned. I have a few suitable candidates, Zhao Sun said. If we can bring them out, it will be beneficial to our plan this time. Han Bing coughed several times again, and then slowly said, I have one, but I haven't tried whether I can summon players in the real world. It should be no problem. Zhao Sun said, my special item has worked before. Death and Han Bing were a little surprised. However, Zhao Sun did not elaborate, so Death and Han Bing did not ask more. At least they understood why Zhao Sun mentioned the use of special items to summon players. Zhao Sun had similar special items, so it was easy for him to think of this method. Zhao Sun asked Han Bing again, does your special item specify that it can only summon a certain person? No. Han Bing said as she took out a doll. However, you can only summon girls, and only 1 person. After using it, the special item will disappear. Then do you mind giving me this special item? Zhao Sun asked politely, I want to summon a girl. Of course. Han Bing handed the doll to Zhao Sun without hesitation. Since the cooperation has been confirmed, she will not be fussy about this necessary effort. Zhao Sun glanced at the description of the special item, and said to Death and Han Bing, wait for me for a while, I will be there soon. Then, he opened his personal panel, and chose to return to the endless train. The summoning method of this special item is completely different from Zhao Sun's Princess's Prince pendant. The summoned person and the summoner must touch the special item together, and then according to the summoner's intention, The two will appear together in the place where the summoner has appeared before. So Zhao Sun must go back. If the special item cannot allow him to return to the real world with the summoned person, he can still use his identity as the deputy conductor to teleport himself to the conductor. No big problem. When he returned to the endless train, Zhao Sun stood in his compartment number 3. Compared with when he left, there was no difference. He opened the compartment door and walked quickly to the back compartment. He asked several people along the way and finally found Zhao Zhao. Zhao Zhao, who was called to the corridor, looked confused. "You, what do you want to talk to me about?" Zhao Sun glanced at his phone. There were still 5 minutes until 12 o'clock in the evening. For the time being, the train rules that prohibit walking freely after 12 o'clock have not been violated. Zhao Sun took out the doll and handed it to Zhao Zhao. "We talk about the details later. You hold the doll." Zhao Zhao hesitated. But her intuition told her that Zhao Sun did not mean to hurt her. And she always believed in her intuition. After all, she was a person with good luck, and her intuition was often very accurate. So, she didn't ask anything and grabbed one of the doll's hands as she was told. Chapter 343, Not a Rebellion. The next second, in Zhao Sun's mind, he successfully brought Zhao Zhao back to the real world and stood beside Death and Han Bing. Zhao Zhao looked at Zhao Sun blankly, then at Death and Han Bing, and she stammered, You all seem to be quite powerful." This was also her intuition. The 3 players in front of her did not look ordinary. She asked Zhao Sun a little dully, "Is that doll a special item? Where am I now? What do you want to talk to me about?" Zhao Sun briefly explained the general situation. Zhao Zhao's eyes widened as she listened, with a look of disbelief. She asked softly, Are you going to rebel?" "It's not a rebellion," Zhao Sun corrected. "The person behind the scenes is not our leader, let alone our king." "That's true." Zhao Zhao grabbed her fingers and rubbed them. But how can I help?" "Your special ability should be able to help," Zhao Sun said confidently. When he knew that Han Bing's special item could only summon one player, Zhao Sun's first thought was to summon Zhao Zhao, not Su Tiantian. The reason was simple. He had devoured Su Tiantian's special ability. Although it could only be used 5 times in total, as long as he could use it, he didn't have to use Su Tiantian's original version. But he didn't have Zhao Zhao's good luck bonus at all, and he couldn't devour it. When doing this kind of assassination, the target might be stronger than himself, so the most needed thing is the good luck bonus. This mysterious thing seems to have almost no use in attack and defense, but in fact it can be very useful at critical moments. Zhao Zhao blinked and finally came to his senses. You know my special ability?" "Yeah." Zhao Sun responded casually, without any intention of explaining, and didn't care what Zhao Zhao would think. He looked at the God of Death and asked, "Do you have any way to summon another person?" The God of Death shook his head. "I don't have such a special item, nor do I have this special ability." After a pause, he suddenly said, "I can destroy the sculpture by myself, so let me do it." His special ability is very suitable for attacking a group. In fact, he wanted to choose this before, because he thinks he is more suitable for this. In this way, the need for companions should be greatly reduced. Death said, looking at Zhao Sun. "Indeed." Zhao Sun nodded. "If you can do it alone, we don't have to consider bringing too many players to join. But only you know where the heart is hidden." Han Bing frowned slightly, and she asked the God of Death, "You can't tell it. Can you draw a picture?" "No." The God of Death shook his head, then he stretched out his left hand and placed it on his eye socket, and with a little force, he dug out his left eye. "But I can use my eyes to lead you." This eyeball is connected to his brain. He can see where he is through the eyeball, and then use the brain to command the eyeball to choose the direction. It was not difficult for him to destroy those sculptures while pointing the way. The Grim Reaper spread out his hand, and the eyeball on his palm rolled twice, and it was obvious that it was alive. "I don't know how to kill the heart," he said truthfully. "Although I know where it is hidden, I can't guarantee that I can destroy the heart. I have no idea at all." Zhao Zhao looked at the eyeball and couldn't help rubbing his eyes. He always felt uncomfortable, as if his eyeball fell out. "Then why not leave it to me?" Zhao Sun took the initiative to suggest, "Speaking of which, I do have a few options for how to destroy the heart, and my special ability can be used just right." He destroyed the sculpture himself. Although it was not the original body, it was the closest to the person behind the scenes. Therefore, destroying the sculpture is the most likely way to kill the person behind the scenes. According to previous experience, Samadhi True Fire is likely to cause damage. As long as there is the element of Samadhi True Fire, mixing with other elements should also cause damage. In addition, Special flames can damage sculptures, and special lightning may also be able to do so. For example, triggering thunder. The power that contains the laws of nature is always more powerful. That settled. The god of death immediately agreed with Zhao Sun's choice and handed his eyeball to Zhao Sun. Seeing that the two had agreed, Han Bing nodded. Okay, I go to the Liao family ancestral hall to deal with the real body behind the scenes. Her mission is to contain the real body as much as possible and distract its attention, rather than trying to kill it. It's difficult, but her special ability is very suitable for use here. At first, she wanted to choose this. Before you act, I give you another guarantee, Zhao Sun said, and took out a cartoon keychain pendant. The beautiful princess has a cute little prince hanging on her body. Princess's prince pendant players who own this item can summon other players who also own the pendant to enter the game in a future game to assist in completing the task. After the summon helps the summoner to pass the game, they can share the total points the summoner gets in that round of the game. If the game fails at the end, the summon will automatically return, but the summoner and the ordinary player will have the same fate. If you die in the game, both the summoned and the summoner will die. Each player has only one chance to summon, and can summon all players who have the item at the same time. Zhao Sun used a special item and tried to summon two people at the same time. The result was very successful, and both people appeared. Amu was wearing the same defensive cape as before. However, compared to before, he was thinner and had a scruffy beard, as if he hadn't taken care of himself for half a month. Xiaohong was sleepy, as if she had been abruptly woken up from sleep. After looking around, Amu didn't understand the situation, but just greeted Zhao Sun. Ashui, long time no see, I didn't expect you to use special items to summon me earlier than me. Xiaohong, who had had the experience once, quickly realized something. She asked, Am I in the real world again? Hearing this, Amu's eyes widened in surprise. What are you talking about? He asked Xiaohong. How can we be in the real world? Indeed, we are in the real world. Zhao Sun took over and roughly explained the situation. After listening, Amu's eyes widened like copper bells. He couldn't believe what he heard. He even felt that he and Zhao Sun, Death, and Han Bing were not on the same endless train at all, otherwise why was there such a big gap between his experience and theirs? Others were already doing tasks in the real world, but he was still struggling in the survival game. Seeing Amu's expression, Xiaohong could probably guess what Amu was thinking. She reached out and patted Amu's shoulder, and said in a tone of someone who had experienced it, I was also quite surprised at first, but just treat it as a task in a survival game. It's different this time, Zhao Sun reminded. He briefly described what he was going to do next. Xiaohong and Amu's eyes widened, and their mouths opened wider. After Zhao Sun finished speaking, both of them looked horrified as if they had seen a husky beating up an alien. Zhao Sun didn't rush them, but quietly waited for the two to digest all the information. Death and Han Bing also waited patiently. Only Zhao Zhao blinked her eyes, looking at this person and that person, her expression still a little confused. She already knew why she was here, and why Zhao Sun chose her. But she didn't know if she could really be useful? How could she be useful? She didn't know what she should do, so she was so confused. After a minute of silence, Xiaohong and Amu finally digested all the information. So, Amu's throat was a little tight due to nervousness. We are going to rebel with you? It's not a rebellion. Han Bing refuted the word like Zhao Sun did before. If it succeeds, we don't have to go through the survival game again. Xiaohong accepted the reality earlier than Amu and quickly recognized the current situation. It's worth taking a risk. Amu thought about it and felt that what Xiaohong said made sense. Then count me in too. In the survival game, you also have to risk your life. Compared to the current situation, there is not much difference. But if this adventure is successful, you will be able to return to a peaceful and quiet life in the future, which is much better than participating in a survival game that seems to have no end. It's worth a try. Seeing that Xiaohong and Amu both agreed to join, Zhao Sun pointed at Han Bing and said, You too follow her. Xiaohong is responsible for replenishing mental power, and Amu is responsible for defense. It can maximize the time for Han Bing to use special abilities, and can also distract the attention of the main body behind the scenes. The main body is undoubtedly the most difficult to deal with. Even if Han Bing's goal is not to kill the main body, he can hide in the distance and attack, but it is also difficult. Therefore, it would be better for Han Bing to have Xiaohong and Amu to assist him. I'm not against your decision, Amu couldn't help but ask, but the special item is in your hand. Are you sure it's okay for us to follow her? Won't we be restricted by the special item to be around you? Probably not. Zhao Sun said his guess. The function of Princess's Prince Pendant is to summon you to help me complete the task. I ask you to assist my teammates, which is also a way to assist in completing the task. AMU was stunned for a moment, and nodded slowly. That makes sense. He glanced at Xiaohong, and Xiaohong returned a glance. Then, the two of them walked to Hanbing's side in tacit understanding. Hanbing did not ask any more questions, and directly accepted Zhao Sun's arrangement. Since Zhao Sun summoned these two people, he must be sure that they can help. The route she chose, facing the real person behind the scenes, is indeed more dangerous than the other two routes. She will not refuse the assistance of helpers. As for the specific special abilities of these two players, it is not too late to ask on the way to the ancestral hall. Zhao Sun took out the unyielding bones from the storage compartment, broke off 2 sections according to the mark, and handed them to the God of Death. This special item can only be used 3 times a day at most. After 3 times, if all the mental power is consumed, it will fall into a deep sleep. If the Grim Reaper fell asleep, he would not be able to provide any support. Although he did not necessarily need support, he had to leave a way out, so he only gave the Grim Reaper 2 bones. The Grim Reaper did not ask anything and took it. The moment he touched the bones, he saw the detailed introduction of unyielding bones. He raised his eyebrows slightly. This thing is indeed what I need. No matter how special the special ability is, it relies on mental power. His special ability is very powerful in attack, but it also consumes a lot of mental power. Moreover, there were too many sculptures. Even if he exhausted his mental power, it would be difficult to destroy all the sculptures in the 3 areas. Before, his plan was to destroy as many sculptures as possible. But with these 2 bones, he could try to destroy them all. The God of Death took out something and handed it to Zhao Sun. In return, this is for you. Zhao Sun did not hesitate and took it directly. It was a special item in the shape of a ring, which had the function of physical defense. Zhao Sun did not have a special item specifically for defense. Although he did not need defense most of the time, the situation this time was special, and it would be good to have an extra guarantee. He put it on his left index finger. It's time to act, Han Bing urged. If there's anything we missed, the 3 of us can contact each other through the communication system. And now we are in the real world, other people can also contact each other through their phones. But my phone is out of power, AMU said weakly. Me too. Xiaohong also nodded. I have special items for charging. Han Bing said to AMU and Xiaohong, I will charge your phones while walking to the destination later. Hearing this, the 2 nodded their heads. Just in case, Zhao Sun, Han Bing and Death took out their phones at the same time and added each other on WeChat. Don't rush to do anything to the main body before I find the heart, Zhao Sun reminded Han Bing. I know. Han Bing replied, wait for your notice. The effect of special items may be weakened by the person behind the scenes. Zhao Sun finally reminded everyone, you should be mentally prepared. Everyone was stunned, but everyone tacitly did not ask any more questions and chose to believe what Zhao Sun said. Finally, everyone split into 3 groups and walked in different directions. As Zhao Sun predicted, Xiaohong and AMU followed Han Bing smoothly without any obstacles. Zhao Sun gave the goddess's wings to Zhao Zhao, and he turned into a sparrow, squatting on Zhao Zhao's shoulder. Zhao Zhao held the eyeball of the God of Death in his hand, and flew towards the destination under the guidance of the eyeball. Chapter 344 Hiding Location of Weakness. Zhao Zhao flew into the sky for the first time, and was very nervous. She couldn't keep her body in balance and stumbled from time to time. But as a lucky person with absolute luck bonus, even if she stumbled in the flight, her speed did not slow down at all, and she moved forward very smoothly. We are flying in the sky like this, what if we are discovered? Zhao Zhao asked Zhao Sun in a low voice with some concern. There should be a department specializing in monitoring the sky, right? That depends on how lucky you are. The sparrow version of Zhao Sun said in Zhao Zhao's ear. The probability of something you don't want to happen should be very low. Zhao Zhao's special ability level must have risen to level 5, and his luck is even better than level 4, so he should be able to achieve the degree he expects. At least for such an ordinary little event, it should not be a problem to achieve what he wants. What's more, when Goddess's wings is worn by a woman, there are additional special effects. All those who see it will not be able to have hostility towards the wearer, but will have admiration. Even if Zhao Zhao was really discovered flying in the sky, those people would lose their vigilance, and would not launch an attack. With 2 preparations, Zhao Sun was not worried about accidents at all. Okay, then I make a good wish. Zhao Zhao made a promise very seriously, and at the end, he asked, how did you know my special ability? It's a long story, Let's talk about it after this matter is resolved. Zhao Sun directly changed the subject. Do you have any special defensive items? If you have any, wear them on your body and try to protect your own safety by yourself. Oh, I have several of these. Zhao Zhao said, pointing to the bracelet and necklace she was wearing. One is for physical defense, and the other is for spell defense, both of which can resist 90% of damage. Then, she took out a jade porcelain bottle from the storage compartment. Take this, and within 24 hours, no matter how serious the injury is, the body can recover quickly. But if you die instantly, you can't recover. As she said that, she poured out a small pill and swallowed it. Do you want to eat it? She asked, pouring out another small pill. I have 2 left, I can give you one. Zhao Sun thought for a moment, took the small pill from Zhao Zhao's hand and swallowed it. Thank you. An extra layer of protection will not hurt. At the end, he commented, your 3 special items complement each other, and to a large extent, they can ensure that you will not be killed instantly, and you can recover quickly from your injuries. Yes, yes, Zhao Zhao couldn't help but smile brightly. With these 3 special items, I can basically guarantee that I will not die from external attacks, which makes me feel much more at ease. She just smiled for 2 seconds, and then she felt that the wind in the sky in winter was too cold, and her gums were a little frozen. She quickly closed her mouth. Then there was no more words along the way. Following the command of the eyeballs, Zhao Zhao quickly flew towards the destination. As Zhao Sun expected, until landing, Zhao Zhao did not attract any expulsion reminders or attacks. After landing safely, Zhao Zhao returned the goddess's wings to Zhao Sun. Zhao Sun put away the wings and took out a small glass bottle. A small transparent glass bottle contained a small amount of blood-red liquid. The red color was very bright, and did not look bloody at all. Instead, it was easy to associate with sweet jam. Zhao Sun took out another bottle of mineral water, opened the bottle cap, and poured a drop of the red liquid in the glass bottle into the bottle cap. Then, he said to Zhao Zhao, the next action may be very dangerous, and I need your help. In order to ensure that you will not betray me, I must give you this special item. He told Zhao Zhao the specific effect of scorching blood without hiding anything. Scorching blood. If the person who swallows the burning blood has no ill will towards you, he will become your best friend. If he has ill will towards you, he will melt into a pool of blood on the spot. P.S. There are 2 drops of burning blood in total, which can be used twice. After all, good friends are more valuable than quantity. I cannot tell you and trick you into drinking it, but I think telling you will help you assist me wholeheartedly. He looked Zhao Zhao in the eye and said solemnly, if you drink it, you can put an end to any suspicion between us. This is the best way. Yeah, I understand. Zhao Zhao quickly accepted Zhao Sun's statement, took the bottle cap from Zhao Sun's hand, and drank it in one gulp without hesitation. She didn't mind Zhao Sun's caution, nor did she think there was anything wrong with Zhao Sun's behavior. They were not very familiar with each other, so it was difficult to trust each other 100%. This was normal. Even if she was sure that she had no ill will towards Zhao Sun, it was still difficult for Zhao Sun to completely believe her. Drinking this special item could avoid these problems. Then Zhao Sun could trust her without any scruples, wipe away unnecessary doubts, and concentrate on doing what he wanted to do. Seeing Zhao Zhao so straightforward, Zhao Sun's eyes moved slightly. He knew that Zhao Zhao had no ill will towards him, but just in case, he had to eliminate all the tiny possibilities. Zhao Zhao could drink scorching blood so happily without getting upset, which made him look at Zhao Zhao a little more pleasing to the eye. After waiting for half a minute, Zhao Zhao blinked. I don't seem to have changed. She knew very well that she had no ill will towards Zhao Sun, so she would not turn into a pool of blood. But she thought that after drinking this special item, she would have very strong emotions towards Zhao Sun. After all, as close friends, the feelings are always deeper than now. But she didn't feel any strange reactions in her body or heart, and even in her emotions and thoughts, there seemed to be no changes. Zhao Sun saw Zhao Ao's reaction, and knew what Zhao Zhao was thinking. He thought for a moment, and said his guess. This is just the establishment of a close friendship, not brainwashing you and making you my slave. Moreover, close friends mean that you and I are equal. It is normal that you will not blindly admire me. That's right. Zhao Zhao nodded in agreement. At this moment, Zhao Sun felt his phone vibrate. He took it out and took a look. It turned out that Han Bing had created a group and pulled Xiao Hong, AMU, and Death into the group. Zhao Sun added Zhao Zhao on WeChat, and then pulled Zhao Xiao into the group. In this way, the 6 people were in the same group. If there was any unexpected situation or any good ideas, they could communicate in the group. Although Zhao Sun had an additional communication system with Death God and Han Bing, He preferred to use mobile phones to communicate as long as conditions allowed. That communication system was more convenient than mobile phones, but it was the product of the mastermind after all. It was difficult to guarantee that the mastermind would not spy on it when communicating in this way. But the person behind the scenes has many restrictions in the real world, and his surveillance ability is greatly reduced. It is not easy to be spied on when communicating with a mobile phone. After closing WeChat, Zhao Sun opened the map app to locate the current location while looking at the surrounding environment. After seeing the location displayed on the map, he showed a look of understanding. I see. What's wrong? Zhao heard what Zhao Sun said and asked curiously, did you find anything? This is the back mountain of the polluted factory area. Zhao Sun answered. He had just checked the information and map of the polluted factory area at his leader's house tonight, and was deeply impressed by this place. Looking directly at this mountain, it was difficult for him to recognize that the other side of the mountain was a large polluted factory area. But as soon as he looked at the map, he immediately understood. No wonder the Liao family built the experimental base here and moved the enshrined body here. It should be to let the body guard its weaknesses at close range and drive away all players who tried to kill it. However, the actions of these players were faster and earlier than his, and his defense had not yet taken shape. But Zhao Sun frowned slightly. Since the man behind the scenes wanted to protect the weakness himself, why didn't he do so at the beginning, but instead commanded the train conductor before, hiding the weakness so far away from the main body? Instantly, he understood. At the beginning, the man behind the scenes had very weak control over the real world, so naturally his control over the Liao family was not strong either. At that time, he probably didn't have the ability to let the Liao family build a special experimental base for him as a cover, just to worship his main body. He may be in a weak state at first, not strong enough to protect his weakness. Perhaps the weakness on him would make him even more insecure, so the best choice at that time was to hide the weakness far away. Zhao Sun slowly exhaled. This was not good news for him. Since the man behind the scenes was confident that he could protect his weakness, it meant that the man behind the scenes was not easy to deal with. However, they divided their forces into 3 groups, weakening the man behind the scenes' strength, distracting the man behind the scenes' attention, and attacking the man behind the scenes' weaknesses, so they still had a chance of winning. Zhao Sun didn't have many emotions, so he wasn't worried, afraid, or uneasy at this time. He just objectively analyzed the current situation and refined his action plan. Under the command of the eyes of the god of death, Zhao Sun and Zhao found a cave halfway up the mountain. It seems that the weakness is in here. Zhao murmured, I just don't know how deep this cave is. I'm a little afraid of the dark. She knew she wasn't smart enough, but she wasn't naive enough to think that the weakness would be placed near the cave entrance. Even if it is not placed in the deepest part of the cave, it must be hidden in some corner. She is not afraid of being tired, but she is afraid of the dark. I have a flashlight, Zhao Sun said, and he took out an ordinary flashlight and handed it to Zhao. You use this first. I will replace it with a new one when it runs out of power. He only has 1 high-intensity flashlight, but 3 ordinary flashlights. It is hard to say how far they will go, so they have to be used sparingly. Looking at the little light in his hand, Zhao's expression relaxed a little. Thank you. Zhao Sun summoned a pygmy marmoset and placed it on his shoulder, then asked Zhao, do you want to go in front or behind? Zhao thought for 2 seconds and replied, I'd rather go in front. With the flashlight in front, she was not so scared. But if there was nothing behind her, she would feel chilly. With Zhao Sun standing behind her, she could rest assured that the safety of the rear would be left to Zhao Sun. Okay, Zhao Sun said, motioning Zhao to go first. This arrangement was just what he wanted. As a person with absolute good luck, Zhao was much safer than others for walking in front and exploring the way. If there was a trap or something, others would surely die, but she would have a high probability of defusing the crisis. This was also the main reason why he wanted to bring Zhao to the real world. The two walked one after the other, and no one spoke for a while. The moment Zhao Sun walked into the cave, the pygmy marmoset sat on Zhao Sun's shoulder in the opposite direction, and its round eyes stared closely at Zhao Sun's back. According to the habit of pygmy marmosets, they hide during the day and come out at night, so their night vision ability is particularly strong. Coupled with the animal's good sense of smell, it is perfect for Zhao Sun to monitor the situation behind. Zhao walked very slowly. In addition to paying attention to the stones under her feet to avoid tripping, she also had to look at the eyeballs in her hand from time to time to see if the eyeballs were pointing in a certain direction. Zhao Sun did not urge her, and patiently followed behind Zhao. Asterisk on the other side. The Grim Reaper has used special items to come to the 7th area. This was the first place where he performed a mission in the real world, and it was also the first place to lose order and become chaotic. At this time, there was no one on the road, but there were sculptures everywhere. In the mess and dirt on the ground, the postures of the sculptures were different, but the faces were all the same strange shapes. Just one look at it, and people would feel a strange discomfort. Obviously, these sculptures were people who died on the roadside after the chaos. They still maintained the postures when they died, but their faces were no longer their faces. There was not much expression on the face of the Grim Reaper. His intact eye locked onto one of the sculptures and marked it in red. At this moment, all the sculptures became his targets. Then his brain issued a command, and all the mechanisms in his body opened, and countless small missiles were launched. After the missile was launched, it split into 10 smaller missiles, flying accurately towards different sculptures. A missile was aimed at a sculpture, and the whole street was blown up in an instant. The special ability of the Grim Reaper is self-mechanization. When the level reaches LV5, except for the brain and heart, all other parts of his body have been mechanized. Not only his own defense and attack power have become extremely high, but also his fatal weaknesses have become extremely few. He is a person with strong hands-on ability. Taking advantage of his own mechanization, he further transformed his body, and added a lot of weapons and ammunition. Because of the effect of special abilities, the output of ammunition does not depend on the outside, but on his consumption of mental power. Therefore, as long as he has mental power, his ammunition is inexhaustible. Chapter 345. You can start to act. While the Death God was cleaning up the sculptures in the 7th district, Han Bing, Xiao Hong and AMU were still on their way to the Liao family ancestral hall. Is our speed a little slow? Xiao Hong asked worriedly. Just now I saw Zhao Zhao in the group say that they have already reached the cave. Even if we enter the cave, it will take a long time to find the things. Han Bing coughed lightly and continued, we can catch up. Just now the Death God sent a photo to the group. He has already cleaned up the sculptures on a street in the 7th district. AMU couldn't help but speak up. Although his actions will not be hindered too much, they have already started to act, and the people behind the scenes will definitely sense it, right? If we can't catch up here, I'm afraid that the Death God will be besieged. Don't worry, we'll be there in a few minutes. Han Bing said as she took out a toy car and threw it on the ground. The moment it landed, the car turned into a normal-sized car. If it weren't for the narrow space in the woods, she wouldn't have to wait until she got to the main road to use this special item. Get in the car, Han Bing said to Xiao Hong and Amu. Amu was a little embarrassed. I can't drive. Xiao Hong followed up. I can drive, but I'm not very good at mountain roads. The car will drive itself, so you don't need to be the driver, Han Bing said as he maneuvered the wheelchair to sit directly on the passenger seat. As if to adapt to Han Bing's situation, the car originally had no seat on the passenger seat, and there was also a retractable pedal that could form a slope, making it convenient for Han Bing to get in the car with his wheelchair. Seeing this, Xiao Hong and Amu hurriedly followed and got on the back seat. After the three of them were seated, the car started immediately and flew into the sky. In an instant, Xiao Hong and Amu's eyes widened. Before, they were wondering, no matter how fast the car was, it would not be possible to reach the ancestral hall in a few minutes. After all, the mountain road was winding. Unexpectedly, it was actually flying. Han Bing operated the electronic panel of the car and quickly located the specific destination. In the next few minutes, the car was completely left to drive by itself. It would choose the fastest and shortest route. Fortunately, Liaojia village was renovated by the Liao family, especially near the Liao family ancestral hall. Not only the road was unobstructed, but also there were no trees blocking it. Han Bing landed smoothly at the entrance of the Liao family ancestral hall. The three of them quickly got out of the car. Han Bing took back the special item car, but did not rush into the Liao family ancestral hall. Xiao Hong and Amu had already entered the battle state, standing on both sides of Han Bing, watching everything around them cautiously. After thinking for 10 seconds, Han Bing took out a special item from the storage compartment. It was a whip in the shape of lightning. She gently waved it towards the direction of the ancestral hall, and a flash of lightning hit the ancestral hall, directly breaking the wall on one side of the ancestral hall. At this time, Xiao Hong and AMU would not question Han Bing's actions at all. They stayed by Han Bing's side dutifully and obeyed his orders at any time. They knew their role in this incident very well, and would not give blind orders without distinguishing the main from the secondary. Han Bing whipped his whip a few times, and completely destroyed half of the wall, revealing the appearance of the ancestral hall. Under the bright lights, rows of tablets were neatly placed on the stepped altar, and at the top of the altar, there was only a strange-looking sculpture. Just one look and there was an indescribable discomfort. Xiaohong subconsciously covered her mouth, and a vague voice came from her fingers. I don't know why, after seeing that sculpture, I felt a little nauseous. Me too. AMU swallowed hard, trying to offset the dizziness. That means we found the right target. Han Bing's condition was much better than Xiaohong and AMU. She had seen sculptures, and had special items that looked like sculptures. Although those were not the originals, and were far less mentally damaging than this original, she had been mentally prepared and accepted it better than Xiaohong and AMU. Moreover, her mental strength is not weak, so it will be easier for her to resist this kind of mental pollution. Don't look at the sculpture, both of you. Han Bing reminded the two people around him. I will tell you when I need you to take action. At other times, I guarantee that you will not be attacked. Xiaohong and Amu looked at each other, obediently retracted their gaze, and took 2 steps back behind Han Bing. At this time, a squid tentacle suddenly appeared on Han Bing's back, followed by the second and third tentacles, until a whole big squid stood behind her. Xiaohong and AMU stared at the squid, which was twice their size. Before they could say anything, they smelled a strong fishy smell. Both of them closed their mouths subconsciously. It is responsible for watching your backs and ensuring that we will not be attacked by surprise. As soon as Han Bing finished speaking, angry birds with fire on their bodies emerged from her body one after another. There were a total of 10 little firebirds. After they all came out, they quickly formed a formation and stared at the sculpture with a covetous look. Han Bing's special ability is to collect all non-human living creatures. The limit of LV5 is 100. When needed, she can summon these collections to do various things for her. Compared with ordinary animals, of course, those non-human NPCs with special abilities in survival games are more popular with her. So, as long as conditions permit, she will use her special ability to collect the NPCs she likes. When she needs to fight, she will send these NPCs out. She collected a wide variety of types, and often she could send out the most suitable NPC according to the characteristics of the enemy. This was one of the reasons why she, a weak player, could survive until now. The next second after these little firebirds formed a formation, more than a dozen monsters with different appearances suddenly appeared in front of the altar in the ancestral hall. Han Bing was slightly startled. Somewhat familiar. After a few seconds, she realized something. These seemed to be the monsters in Carriage 17, when she was a rookie, and had just boarded the endless train. Of course, the monsters in front of her are very different from the ones she faced before. They are not the same batch. But they feel like the same kind of monsters. Since she has this special ability, she has been very sensitive to the breath of different kinds. She is absolutely sure that these are the monsters in Car 17. Thinking of this, she took out her mobile phone, opened the voice, and said in the group, "We guessed correctly. The Liao family does worship a strange-looking sculpture, and he summoned the monsters in Car 17 of the endless train, which further proves that he is the mastermind behind the endless train." Although everyone had already believed this, the fact in front of them could make everyone more resolute. Soon, Zhao Sun sent a voice message. His voice had a clear echo and was mixed with the sound of footsteps. Han Bing, you can start to act. Han Bing commanded the little firebird to attack without hesitation, and at the same time asked Zhao Sun, "Have you found the weakness?" "Not yet." Zhao Sun answered truthfully, and then said, "However, I have encountered obstacles here, so I need you to help me distract some of his attention." "Okay, I got it." Han Bing put down his phone and looked at the battle between the little firebirds and the monsters. One of the little firebirds burned itself, but half of the monsters were already dead. At present, the little firebirds have the advantage. As soon as Han Bing's idea came up, one of the monsters suddenly raised a claw, and a stream of water emerged from the palm of the monster's hand, instantly soaking the 3 little firebirds. After being soaked, the flames on the little firebirds were extinguished, and the feathers became particularly heavy with water, and soon they were forced to fall to the ground. Just as the 3 little firebirds were trying to maintain their balance and land safely, another monster's hands became extremely huge, and 2 of the little firebirds were slapped with 2 palms, instantly turning them into meat patties. Han Bing immediately ordered the remaining little firebirds to retreat temporarily, and quickly summoned a stone monster to block the 2 camps. No matter which direction the monsters ran, they would be blocked by the stone monster. They immediately used their respective abilities to try to destroy the stone monster. Who knew that this stone monster was so strong that it could not be damaged by fire, blisters would not stop, and even the blade would break when it was cut. For a while, the situation was deadlocked. Han Bing looked at the monsters using various abilities, and she knew what was going on. Not long after she became an old player, she began to suspect that the monsters in Carriage 17 were probably the dead players. Now it seems that her guess was correct. The abilities used by these monsters are exactly the same as the special abilities of the players. If it were other players, they might not be so sure. But her senses were very sharp, just like the special abilities, and the abilities used by NPCs felt different. It was difficult for her to describe it in words, but she was sure that her feeling was not wrong. So, she was now 100% sure that these monsters were transformed from dead players. But these monsters in front of her were much more powerful than those that new players faced when they boarded the endless train. In other words, the monsters that new players face are likely to be controlled by the people behind the scenes to maintain a level not much different from humans. And now, this is the true strength of these monsters. If she guessed correctly, they should all retain the special ability level they had before they died. The good news is that only players who died on the endless train will become monsters, so there should be very few monsters with high special ability levels. It is not difficult for her to just deal with these monsters. However, she was not so naive as to think that the real body of the man behind the scenes could only summon such a few monsters. Han Bing's eyes narrowed slightly. She never expected that she could kill the man behind the scenes who had no weaknesses, so her goal was to fight a protracted war, forcing the man behind the scenes to split his attention and deal with 3 people at the same time. Because of this, she had to keep a distance, attack from a distance, and conserve her strength, and take it slowly. Thinking of this, Han Bing waved the whip in her hand again, and the lightning accurately passed over the stone monster and struck one of the monsters. The monster was instantly struck stiff and fell to the ground without any movement. At this moment, more than 20 monsters appeared out of thin air and rushed towards the stone monster without saying a word. Unfortunately, these new monsters were of average strength and still could not destroy the stone monster at all. Han Bing took advantage of the stone monster's obstruction, saw every flaw revealed by the monsters, and controlled the little firebird to attack. For a while, she had the upper hand. But this advantage only lasted about 10 seconds. More monsters appeared, and some even appeared directly behind the stone monster. These monsters that appeared from behind the stone monster had no intention of attacking the stone monster at all, and came directly towards Han Bing. Han Bing was not panicked at all, and summoned a few more NPCs to fight against the new monsters. For a while, the battle became very stalemate. After Zhao Sun killed 10 monsters in succession, he suddenly noticed that the movements of several of the monsters were somewhat unnatural and jerked. He immediately understood that Han Bing had successfully distracted the attention of the person behind the scenes. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly killed all the monsters blocking the road, and then said to Zhao Zhao, "Keep going." Zhao Zhao said "oh" twice, and walked quickly into the depths of the cave. At the same time, she couldn't help but whisper to Zhao Sun, "These monsters look very much like the monsters in Carriage 17. Yes, they should be the monsters in Carriage 17. Zhao Sun replied, "Although they can also use special abilities, their level is too low to be feared." "Then I really hope that all the obstacles we encounter next are of this level." Zhao Zhao's voice became even lower, as if making a wish. "This way, we will have a greater chance of finding the weakness of the person behind the scene safely." As soon as she finished speaking, she was tripped by a stone and fell to the ground uncontrollably. Zhao Sun quickly grabbed Zhao Zhao's arm. After Zhao Zhao stood firm, she patted her chest and said, "I was so scared. I almost thought I was going to fall to the ground." There were many sharp stones on the ground. She felt a little pain in her feet when she stepped on them with her shoes on. If she fell on them, she would definitely get a few holes in her body, and her clothes would be pierced. Zhao Sun took back his hand and said nothing, but motioned Zhao Zhao to keep going forward. Zhao Zhao did not dare to waste time, and her pace was faster than before. As she walked, she looked at the eyeball in her hand. When she almost fell just now, she subconsciously exerted force with her palm. Fortunately, she did not crush the eyeball. However, the touch of this eyeball is quite strange. Although she has not really touched other people's eyeballs, she knows that eyeballs are more or less fleshy and elastic. But this eyeball feels hard. It is more like an artificial eye, not a real human eye. Perhaps, this is why the god of death can take off this eyeball at will. But it is still connected to the brain at such a distance, which feels quite powerful. I don't know if it is some kind of special item. Chapter 346, Weakening Special Items. Zhao Zhao thought about a lot of things, but he never stopped. After a while, the two of them came to a fork in the road. Zhao Zhao quickly shone the flashlight on the eyeball in his hand, and the eyeball moved slightly and pointed to the left. "Go here," Zhao Zhao said to Zhao Sun behind him, and took the initiative to get into the cave on the left. The cave on the left is only wide enough for one person to walk, but it is not too crowded. What makes people uncomfortable is that the height is only about 1.6 meters. Zhao Zhao had to lower his head from time to time when walking to avoid hitting his head. Not to mention Zhao Sun, who was about 1.8 meters tall. He almost walked forward with his back half bent. After walking for a while, he felt it was really inconvenient, so he simply turned into a ring-tailed lemur, and finally he could move forward smoothly. On his shoulder, the pygmy marmoset, which was only about 15 centimeters long, was still sitting. Zhao Zhao heard the footsteps behind him were different from before, and couldn't help but look back. He saw the ring-tailed lemur that Zhao Sun had turned into. She was stunned for a moment and asked carefully, "Are you Shui?" "Yes." The ring-tailed lemur replied calmly, "Keep going." Although the appearance was very different, the eyes and tone were indeed Zhao Sun. Zhao Zhao breathed a sigh of relief and took another step. "You scared me. I thought I had lost you." Then, she asked curiously, "Your special ability is to be able to transform into various animals?" She had seen Zhao Sun transform into a sparrow and a ring-tailed lemur. The species and characteristics of these two animals are completely different, so she felt that there should be no restrictions on Zhao Sun's transformation. As long as it is an animal, he can transform. "Yeah," Zhao Sun responded, not planning to elaborate. Before Zhao Zhao could ask more, there was a sudden movement in front. Zhao Zhao hurriedly stopped. Zhao Sun knew Zhao Zhao would not stop for no reason, so he immediately looked over. But he saw nothing. "It feels strange." Zhao Zhao whispered to Zhao Sun, "It's not right." Zhao Sun trusted Lucky's feeling, so he did not urge Zhao Zhao to walk faster, but observed carefully, slowed down his breathing, and listened attentively. About 5 seconds later, he finally heard a subtle sound. It came from above his head. He immediately strengthened his night vision fivefold and looked upward. In the weak light, he could faintly see a black tentacle that almost blended into the darkness, slowly crawling along the stone wall. The moment Zhao Sun raised his head, a sharp thorn emerged from each suction cup on the soft and sticky tentacle. Zhao Sun quickly stretched out his right hand, and a dense net formed by flames quickly pounced on the tentacle. Before the thorns were launched, the tentacle was burned to ashes. At the same time, Zhao Sun's left hand released a basketball-sized fireball in front of Zhao Zhao, shining all the way, and indeed saw countless black sticky tentacles. The range that ordinary flashlights can illuminate is really limited, and these tentacles are all lurking in the shadows. No wonder Zhao Zhao couldn't see them. Zhao Sun quickly jumped onto Zhao Zhao's back and set up a flame barrier around Zhao Zhao. "Keep going," he said to Zhao Zhao calmly. "They are afraid of fire." Zhao Zhao said him and walked forward again. She trusted Zhao Sun's judgment and ability, and took steps without any hesitation. The tentacles were indeed afraid of fire. Before Zhao Zhao approached, they had already spread out a distance. However, they did not give up the attack. While retreating, they fired small black needles at Zhao Zhao. Each sucker stored several needles, and so many tentacles fired at the same time, as dense as rain. But these little gadgets were nothing in front of the Samadhi true fire. They were melted clean as soon as they touched the flame. But as more and more needles melted, a bad smell gradually filled the air. "It seems to be poisonous," Zhao Zhao said, as he quickly took out a wooden box from the storage compartment. Opening the wooden box, there were 5 sesame-sized pills inside. After Zhao Zhao took one himself, he handed another to Zhao Sun, a pill that can cure all poisons. It can last for 5 hours. Zhao Sun took it and ate it immediately. The slight discomfort that had already occurred quickly disappeared. "Do you want to eat one of your little monkeys?" Zhao Zhao asked Zhao Sun. "No," Zhao Sun replied, "just recycle it." As soon as he finished speaking, he had already taken the pygmy marmoset back into the primate blessing. The injured primate returned to the special item, and was summoned again after 48 hours to recover. The pygmy marmoset was somewhat poisoned just now, and even if the poison was not much, it would take 48 hours to recover. Therefore, within 48 hours, Zhao Sun tried not to summon it again. Seeing Zhao Sun say this, Zhao Zhao took back his wooden box, and continued to move forward. Zhao Sun lay on Zhao Zhao's back, not needing to walk by himself, concentrating on controlling the width and thickness of the flame barrier, and maintaining a distance of about 30 centimeters around Zhao Zhao. He looked at the back of Zhao Zhao's head, and felt that it was a very wise decision to pull Zhao Zhao into the game. Although Zhao Zhao's attack power was not very good, his self-protection ability was quite first class. She has a solution for almost any way to cause harm. Even if she doesn't have much brains, as long as she doesn't cause trouble and has great luck, Every survival game will not be difficult for her to pass. 10 minutes later, Zhao Zhao finally finished the cave and came to a new fork in the road. And those tentacles seemed to have a range limit, unable to leave this road and hide in other roads. So, when Zhao Zhao reached the fork in the road, the tentacles that could not be avoided were burned to ashes. This time, there are 3 intersections to choose from. Zhao Zhao glanced at the eyeball in his hand, and walked into the cave on the far right. Zhao Sun summoned a squirrel monkey. The squirrel monkey is larger than the pygmy marmoset, but it is also petite. It does not feel too heavy on Zhao Sun's shoulder. Like the pygmy marmoset, the squirrel monkey is very smart and takes the initiative to face the back and monitor the situation behind. Although its night vision is not as good as the pygmy marmoset, its sense of smell and hearing are good, which is enough as a warning monkey. As they went deeper and deeper, the monsters they encountered became more and more difficult to deal with. But with Zhao Sun's various special abilities, Zhao Zhao's assistance and good luck, they always survived one difficulty after another without any damage. Time passed bit by bit, and when Zhao Zhao's legs were sore, he couldn't help but take out his mobile phone to check. It was 3:30 in the morning. They walked for almost 3 hours. This cave is too deep. Zhao Zhao didn't stop, but couldn't help but sigh, I haven't reached the end after walking for so long. I doubt that I will have no strength to walk out after I finish my work. At this time, Zhao Sun had returned to his original appearance. He said to Zhao Zhao, if the problem is solved, it won't affect anything to rest in the cave for a day and a night before leaving. We have food and water. That's right. Zhao Zhao nodded in agreement. Then she asked, how much mental power have you consumed? You have been killing monsters all the way for 3 hours. Not bad. Zhao Sun replied, you can still kill for another 3 hours. Then your mental power is really strong. Zhao Zhao sighed, if it were me, I would probably not be able to do it in an hour. Zhao Sun smiled and said nothing. In fact, under the high-intensity killing of monsters, his mental power consumption was quite large. However, before each monster was killed, he absorbed all their mental power. After all, the Spirit Supply Station LV5 with a 5-fold increase can absorb the mental power of non-players and non-humans, and monsters are naturally in this category. Although these monsters do not have much mental power, there are enough monsters. He consumed and replenished at the same time. His actual consumption was far less than what Zhao Zhao saw. Suddenly, the phones of both people vibrated at the same time. Zhao Zhao subconsciously stopped and glanced at his phone. It was a message in the group. A message from the God of Death. Zhao Zhao told Zhao Sun the message from the God of Death. The effect of his special item has weakened, and he asked us if this has happened. Keep going, I reply. Zhao Sun said to Zhao Zhao. Zhao Zhao obediently put away his phone. Zhao Sun took out his phone and started typing. The Grim Reaper didn't send a voice message. Maybe he was in a place where it was not convenient to talk, so Zhao Sun chose to send a text message. Ah Shui, I haven't used any special items yet, so I haven't found out whether the effects of special items have weakened. As soon as this message was sent, the message of the Hanbing trio followed. Hanbing, indeed, the effects of my special items have also weakened. Xiaohong, me too. AMU. +1 seeing this, Zhao Sun immediately said to Zhao Zhao, all their special items have been affected, and the effects of our special items may have begun to weaken, but we haven't used them much, so we haven't felt it yet. If only Death God found the problem, it might be that the person behind the scenes restricted the effect of the special items on Death God's side. But if the 3 people on Han Bing's side had problems, then Zhao Sun's side would not be spared. Zhao Zhao was stunned for a moment, and then understood what Zhao Sun meant. The detoxification pills and body recovery pills we took before may no longer have the original effect, but we can't feel it for the time being. Zhao Sun nodded and said, the weakening of the effects of these 2 special items should be done from 2 aspects. One is time, and the other is the degree of detoxification and recovery. I know what you mean. Zhao Zhao looked unhappy. If the effect is reduced by half, then the 5-hour detoxification pill will only be effective for 2.5 hours, and may only remove half of the toxins. The recovery pill will be effective for 12 hours, and the recovery speed will be halved. That's about it. Zhao Sun said to Zhao Zhao while sending a message in the group, but it shouldn't be as serious as you think. Without waiting for Zhao Zhao to ask, Zhao Sun took the initiative to answer. If the special items can be weakened at will, then the people behind the scenes will not tolerate us until this time. When they first discussed the plan, perhaps due to the limitations of the real world, the person behind the scenes had no ability to hear it. But when they were divided into 3 groups and made such a big noise, the person behind the scenes must have discovered it. No matter how slow the person behind the scenes was, he could guess their intentions. He must have wanted to stop him. In addition to sending monsters to create various obstacles, he must have thought of ways to weaken the effects of special items. But it was not until 3 hours after they took action that the effects of special items began to weaken, which shows that this cost the person behind the scenes a lot. In other words, the person behind the scenes cannot weaken the effect of special items to the greatest extent, and the weakening takes a certain amount of time to complete. Just like the effect of special items cannot be changed but can only be weakened, the weakening itself is also limited. Soon, there was a reply in the group. After reading the messages sent by others, Zhao Sun said to Zhao Zhao, "From the situation of other players, the effect of special items will be weakened by 1/3 at most, but this is a minority phenomenon. Most special items are only weakened by 1/5. It's better than I expected." Zhao Zhao breathed a sigh of relief, but her expression was not completely relaxed. But according to 1/3, the effect of the detoxification pill is about to end. If there is no poison next, it will be fine. Once it encounters something poisonous, she only has 3 detoxification pills left. 2 people take 1 each. In the worst case, the effective time is only a little more than 3.5 hours. She doesn't know how to distribute the remaining one. But she has no confidence at all that she can find the weakness of the mastermind in the next 3.5 hours and destroy it. The further you go, the stronger the monsters you encounter, and the more time you waste. It's a bit difficult to find the weakness of the person behind the scenes in 3.5 hours, not to mention that the process of destroying the weakness may be very difficult and long. The most important thing is that if the detoxification effect is only half, the body cannot completely get rid of the symptoms of poisoning. In this state, facing the various obstacles that follow, the longer it takes, it is difficult to guarantee whether you can get out alive. In addition, there is only one body recovery pill left. If one of them takes it, the other will lose the opportunity to heal quickly. What should I do? It can be said that this is the most difficult situation Zhao Zhao has faced since he became a player. Zhao Sun saw Zhao Zhao's uneasiness at a glance, and he comforted him. "Don't worry, from what I have asked other players, the weakening of the effect of special items can only weaken one aspect. In other words, the detoxification pills will either shorten the time or reduce the detoxification effect, not weaken both at the same time." After saying that, he sent his speculation to the group so that everyone could have a clear idea. Zhao Zhao hummed and said softly, "If that's the case, then I would rather weaken time, so that at least within the effective time, all toxins can still be 100% eliminated." "Indeed?" Zhao Sun paused for a moment and suddenly said, "You don't have to give me the remaining detoxification pills and body recovery pills. Keep them for yourself." Chapter 347 Finale. Zhao Zhao was stunned for a moment. She turned back to look at Zhao Sun with a look of disapproval in her eyes. How can that be? Of course, when facing difficulties, give it to whoever needs it most. Although she was very worried about not having enough pills, she never thought that she had to keep all these things for herself. What she thought was that she would give it to whoever was in an emergency. What she was worried about was what to do when another person encountered an emergency and needed pills but didn't have them. Although this special item is hers, she can choose not to give it to Zhao Sun, but as a companion, she can't do such a thing. "I'm not being polite to you," Zhao Sun said seriously. "I have other ways to save my life." After a pause, he said, "However, my way of saving my life takes time, and it is very likely that I will fall into a coma or a more serious situation. At that time, I will need you to protect me. These detoxification pills, body recovery pills, etc., you should keep them for yourself, so that they can play a greater role." Seeing Zhao Sun's serious expression and well-reasoned words, Zhao Zhao finally nodded. "Okay, I listen to you." Although she chose to follow Zhao Sun's arrangements, she still prayed silently in her heart that it would be better if no more poisonous substances appeared next time. Even though she knew in her heart that this possibility was not high, at least. She hoped that at least she would not be poisoned again before finding the weakness of the person behind the scenes. As she walked forward, she prayed very devoutly in her heart. At this moment, she hoped that her good luck would come in handy. She knew very well that her absolute good luck was also limited. Better luck only made it easier for her to solve problems than ordinary people, but it was unlikely to prevent a bad thing from happening. The role of good luck is to find opportunities in danger, not to prevent danger from happening. She can indeed bring good luck to her companions in the same camp, but she is not sure how much good luck she can bring. Zhao Zhao sighed secretly in her heart, and then she continued to pray silently. Maybe she was devout enough, and her prayers worked. I don't know if her prayers really worked. In the next hour, the monsters they encountered became more and more powerful, but none of them used poison. In addition, when the monsters were moving, they would occasionally freeze for a few seconds. It was obvious that the actions of death and ice had a significant impact on the man behind the scenes, making it difficult for the man behind the scenes to control these monsters. The most important thing was that they seemed to have finally reached the end of the cave. This cave is not a dead end. At the end, there is a cave entrance. Walking out of the cave entrance, you will arrive in the valley. At this moment, the eyeball in Zhao Zhao's hand quickly turned twice, and then it automatically flew forward and floated on an altar in the middle of the valley. In the middle of the altar, there was an ancient-looking wooden box. What does this mean? Zhao Zhao subconsciously looked at Zhao Sun, who was standing beside him, and asked in a low voice, "The weakness of the mastermind is in the wooden box on the altar?" "It should be," Zhao Sun said, and suddenly took out a gun from the storage compartment and handed it to Zhao Zhao. "It can save your life at a critical moment." Zhao Zhao looked at the pistol in his hand and swallowed his original doubts. It looks like an ordinary pistol, but it is actually a special item. Real gun. This item can ignore any form of defense and attack the enemy's soul. The first attack on the enemy will not feel anything, but as long as the enemy is attacked twice at the same position, the enemy will be killed on the spot. Any form of remedy or life-saving measures are ineffective. P.S. After the item successfully kills a target, it will enter a 24-hour cooling period. Zhao Zhao blinked and understood the power of this special item. No matter how difficult the enemy is, as long as it can hit the same position twice, it will definitely die. The only drawback is that it will enter a cooling period after being used once. But at a critical moment, it can indeed save lives. "You gave this to me. What will you do yourself?" Zhao Zhao showed Zhao Sun a worried look. "I have other ways to save my life," Zhao Sun said succinctly. As long as Zhao Zhao is alive, the good luck effect will be there, so he can't let Zhao Zhao die. Moreover, the effect of special items can be weakened by the mastermind, so it is definitely impossible to kill the mastermind's weakness. If you have to try with a real gun, it will waste time. In assassination, every second is very precious. Once you make a move, you must use the trick that is most likely to kill the mastermind. The best case scenario is that we can walk to the altar smoothly. Zhao Sun paused and chuckled, but I don't think it will be so smooth. This is why he gave the special item to Zhao Zhao now. The monsters that can guard the altar are definitely much more powerful than the previous ones. More importantly, even if the power of the mastermind is weakened and his attention is distracted, the precision can be improved when the number of monsters he controls is reduced. From this moment on, the monsters he encounters next will probably be difficult to deal with. Just when Zhao Sun took out Primate Blessing and prepared to summon a few more monkeys, the eyeball belonging to the god of death suddenly moved. It flew over the valley, facing the altar, and its eyeball suddenly split in the middle, followed by more than a dozen needle-thick things scattered all over the valley. The moment it landed, they exploded one after another. And in every place it attacked, there were traps exposed. This is not a human eye, right? Zhao Zhao finally couldn't help but speak out the doubts that had been lingering in his heart. If it was just speculation before, it was 100% certain now. Which normal person's eyes can hide bullets? Although she didn't know whether those needle-like things should be called bullets. In short, it looked like a robot's eye. Zhao Sun looked much calmer than Zhao Zhao, as if he had realized the problem with the eyeball of the god of death early on. The god of death is giving us the last help. Destroy all the known traps, and remove some obstacles. Obviously, the god of death knew the existence of these traps, and it must have been told by the former train conductor. These traps were probably made by the former train conductor. When the Grim Reaper gave them this eyeball, he should have planned it long ago. After taking them to their destination, they will deal with all the traps that can be dealt with. But there is a high probability that there are other traps here. Since the person behind the scenes can summon monsters to guard here, he can naturally instruct the monsters to make more traps. However, it is also good to be able to clean up some of them. Almost when Zhao Sun finished this thought, several monsters appeared next to each trap. It feels like the destruction of the trap triggered the appearance of these monsters. Zhao Zhao said, as she took out a bow and arrow from her storage compartment. She didn't have many special offensive items, but she did have some. As long as the defensibility was not higher than hers, she could use this arrow to hit the enemy's vital points. Indeed, Zhao Sun's hand flashed with lightning, and he was ready to attack. It's better to trigger it than to hide in the dark and be ambushed when we get close. Judging from the situation, according to the normal process, they will encounter the trap first. When they find a way to solve the trap first, the monster will appear. This is the easiest time to relax, and it is also the easiest time for the monster to attack successfully. All the way to the altar, they will be attacked by traps plus monsters in turn, and it is hard to defend. It is actually a good thing to be triggered by the eyes of the god of death at once. Zhao Zhao didn't say anything else, and concentrated on shooting arrows with his bow. One arrow hit a big monster, very accurately. Zhao Sun also used the lightning ability, and lightning struck one after another, leaving no one behind. But after this round of attacks, only half of the monsters were killed. The remaining monsters were only slightly injured. They are indeed much more difficult to deal with than the previous monsters. Zhao Zhao looked at Zhao Sun with some concern. What are your plans? If her arrows missed, it would only prove that these monsters' defense capabilities were stronger than hers. But even if these monsters were transformed from dead players, they shouldn't all have such strong defense capabilities. Unless these monsters were specially cultivated and transformed. If so, these monsters would be harder to kill than she expected. Well, I have an idea. Zhao Sun took out a plastic firefly model slowly, with a faint yellow-green light flickering in its belly. He did not use lighting to the maximum extent just now, but just tested it. Now he has a basic idea in mind. He lowered his voice and said to Zhao Zhao, "When I tell you to close your eyes, close them immediately, and open them when I tell you to open them." Although Zhao Zhao didn't know what Zhao Sun wanted to do, she didn't ask any more questions. They were now very close to the weakness of the person behind the scenes. Even if they had a plan, they couldn't say it directly, otherwise what was the difference between it and plotting loudly to the enemy? So, she didn't ask anything, but just nodded obediently. The next second, Zhao Sun said the words "close your eyes," and pinched the belly of the firefly in his hand. Zhao Zhao immediately closed his eyes obediently, but even so, he still felt the dazzling light. Firefly light. After taking out this item, gently squeeze it, and it will emit a very strong light, blocking the vision of all creatures except the holder. The duration is up to half an hour. You can hold it in your hand and use it, or command it to fly to the target. After the time limit ends, or under the command of the holder, this item will automatically fly back to the holder's hand. The effect of special items has been weakened, so the longest time Firefly Light may last is only a quarter of an hour, or the effect of blocking vision is only half of the original. But it's worth a try anyway. The moment the light came on, Zhao Sun was sure that the intensity of the light had not changed, so what changed must be the duration. Even if it was only half the time, it was enough. Zhao Sun glanced at Zhao Zhao, who had her eyes closed. Although Zhao Zhao looked a little uneasy, she never opened her eyes. Very cooperative. Zhao Sun was very satisfied. 3 minutes later, Zhao Zhao heard Zhao Sun's low voice again, "Open your eyes." Then, she felt the dazzling light dissipate. She also obeyed and opened her eyes immediately. Unlike the monsters whose eyes were hurt by the dazzling light, Zhao Zhao's vision was not affected at all after closing her eyes in advance. When she opened her eyes, the monsters had not yet recovered from the strong light, and each of them still had their eyes closed. But other than that, she didn't find anything else. These monsters didn't fall down and die, as if they had not been attacked at all in the 3 minutes of strong light. She turned her head to look at Zhao Sun, who didn't have anything on him, and it seemed that he didn't take advantage of the strong light to make any preparations. For a moment, she was a little confused. These 3 minutes that were hard to gain, nothing happened. Before Zhao Zhao could think more, Zhao Sun spoke again. "Attack!" Zhao Sun only said these 2 words, and then controlled the lightning to attack the monsters continuously. Under the lightning attack that was many times stronger than before, the monsters had almost no time to react, and fell to the ground one after another. But soon, another wave of monsters appeared. As soon as these monsters appeared, they took the initiative to launch special ability attacks on Zhao Sun and Zhao Zhao. Water balls, fire balls, wind blades, earth spikes, lightning, all appeared, in addition to some other common special abilities. Zhao Zhao did not dare to be distracted, staring at the attacks, trying to defend and dodge. With the protection of special items, plus flexible dodging, and the bonus of good luck, she was fine for the time being. Zhao Sun took out Primate Blessing and Crazy Rabbit, summoning all primates except the Pygmy Marmoset, and the Crazy Rabbit that would not stop until it died. After the Crazy Rabbit is attacked, its defense and attack power will be increased accordingly. Even if its body is torn into pieces, as long as it still exists, every piece of its body will try its best to kill the enemy. Every time Zhao Zhao and Zhao Sun were attacked before they could dodge, the Crazy Rabbit would take the initiative to act as a meat shield to protect Zhao Zhao and Zhao Sun as much as possible. For a while, it became the most difficult opponent for the monsters. In such a chaotic battle, No one noticed that an ordinary green frog jumped onto the altar, holding a red seal in its front flippers, and quickly stamped it on the wooden box in the middle of the altar. In an instant, all the monsters seemed to have paused and stopped attacking. Zhao Zhao was able to catch her breath. She looked up and saw that the monsters all turned their heads to look at the altar. She also looked over. Only then did she see that a frog had appeared on the altar at some point. At this moment, one of the frog's front flippers had already pressed on the wooden box in the middle of the altar, as if it wanted to open the box. The moment it touched the box, a huge monster jumped out of the altar, and its palm leaf-like claws slapped the frog mercilessly. The frog jumped flexibly, not only avoiding the claw's attack, but also jumping onto the monster's shoulder. The next second, the monster let out an angry roar, and all the pores on its body began to secrete corrosive liquid. The frog seemed to feel no discomfort, and still squatted steadily on the monster's shoulder. Seeing that the monster's claws were about to pounce again, the frog suddenly took out a dog collar. The dog collar just touched the monster's neck, and it was immediately put on the monster's neck steadily. Then, the monster's power and the liquid secreted from its pores quickly disappeared, and even its size shrank. Its originally ferocious aura also weakened, and its eyes became evasive. Shackles of cowardice. Anyone who wears this item will lose their courage, become timid and submissive, and will not be able to use special abilities. And this item can only be taken off by the owner, and no other person, special item or special ability can take it off or destroy it. PS1. According to the special ability level of the owner of this item, special abilities below this level can be completely sealed. Special abilities of the same level can only be sealed for 24 hours, and special abilities above this level can only be sealed for half an hour. PS2. If you do not take off the item after the effect on the wearer disappears, the item will be destroyed when the effect disappears. If you want to reuse it, please take care of the item, and take it off in time. How to use. Throw it accurately on the opponent's neck, and the collar will be automatically put on the opponent. When the monster was put on the dog collar, other monsters had already reacted and quickly approached the altar. Unfortunately, they were already far away from the altar while attacking and approaching Zhao Zhao. It was not possible to get back to the altar in 2 or 3 steps. The frog was not interested in fighting. After controlling the largest monster, it returned to the wooden box and stretched out its front flippers again. The monsters ran towards the altar while using their special abilities to attack the frog. The frog seemed not to be worried at all, and did not even look back. Although Zhao Zhao did not understand what was going on at this time, she realized that the frog was on her side. She immediately took out a piece of black cloth and threw it at the monsters. This is a special item stage curtain. Once it appears, it can intercept all people according to the user's wishes. No matter how powerful the opponent is, no matter how powerful the special ability is, they will be intercepted for 5 seconds. Although 5 seconds is very short, it is enough to change the situation at such a critical moment. The frog successfully opened the wooden box. There was no hidden weapon attack, and no other anomalies appeared. Just simply lifted the lid of the wooden box and opened it easily. Zhao Zhao, who originally thought that there would be hidden weapons, opened her mouth in surprise. I always feel that this is not in line with the style of the person behind the scenes. So many traps were set up before, it is impossible that the most critical step will not be hindered at all. What she didn't know was that after using the fire red seal, the wooden box temporarily belonged to the seal holder. Under the control of the frog, the original trap and hidden weapon had been automatically removed. After the wooden box was opened, the contents were revealed. It was a mass of grayish-white meat. Perhaps it is not accurate to call it meat, as its texture is a bit like fungi. It slowly moved in the wooden box, changing its position from time to time, but it never moved out of the box. Death was right. This was not a real heart, and it was even impossible to tell where the thing belonged to. But it was more appropriate to call the only weakness of the latter heart. The frog raised its front flippers, and a dagger formed by Samadhi true fire quickly took shape. Then, the flame dagger stabbed at the heart without hesitation. Almost at the moment of stabbing, obvious burn marks appeared on the heart, where the flame dagger passed. The next second, the monsters that broke free from their restraints and rushed towards the altar suddenly disappeared. And the frog squatting on the altar also uncontrollably turned back into human form in an instant. It was Zhao Sun himself. It seemed that at the moment of hurting the heart, any disguise could not be maintained. Zhao Zhao looked at Zhao Sun squatting on the altar, and then looked at Zhao Sun standing beside him, and was suddenly a little confused. Could it be a clone? In fact, during the 3 minutes, when he used firefly light to block his vision, Zhao Sun took out doll that is good at imitation and transformed it into his own appearance, and then used ability injector to draw out 0.1 milliliters of his own blood and injected it into the doll's body, giving the doll lightning power within an hour. He had used lightning attacks before and chose to give the doll lightning power, just to prevent the monsters from suspecting that the doll in front of them was a fake. Zhao Sun's original body turned into a frog, and with the ability of nullification, he easily approached the altar under various chaotic attacks. In this melee, even the people behind the scenes would not pay attention to a little frog, let alone those monsters. In frog form, the invalidation ability is triggered, and any physical attack and special ability attack are ineffective against Zhao Sun. So the monster that emerged from the altar wanted to corrode him through the corrosive liquid secreted from the pores, but it could only fail. In the end, as he wished, he finally opened the wooden box and successfully injured this heart. But it was not enough. Zhao Sun instantly conjured up more flaming daggers, all of which stabbed at the heart in the wooden box. The burn marks on the heart became more and more serious, and the gray-white color was gradually replaced by dark brown. Seeing that the heart would be completely destroyed after a few more times, a voice suddenly sounded in Zhao Sun's mind without any warning. "Kill me, and you will become me." The voice seemed to come from the abyss, cold and gloomy. Immediately afterwards, countless images kept flowing in his mind. He received too much information at once, which made his head swell. He mobilized all his mental strength to barely resist, and then he quickly sorted out the information he received. So that's it. What died was only his body and will, but his existence would not really disappear. It would just become a force without entity and consciousness. If he succeeded in killing him, then he would be called him. But human souls and wills are often not strong enough, and they will soon be swallowed up by his powerful power, and become a small part of his power. Although the original him has also died, in the long years, he will regenerate his own will, and gradually restore all his power. At that time, it was just a new reincarnation. Unless, after he killed him, he controlled him with his own will, then he could be called him forever and truly possess his power. Humans always fear death. The voice sounded again. You will not be an exception. This sentence seemed to say that Zhao Sun would not be the exception who controlled him, nor would he be the exception who was not afraid of death. Zhao Sun looked at the heart that was moving very slowly and suddenly chuckled. He looked up at the sky, and his voice was also full of laughter. "It seems that you are really scared, otherwise why would you be willing to talk to me?" This also means that his method is correct. Samadhi true fire can kill him. Zhao Sun raised his right hand and aimed at the heart in the wooden box. Countless tiny and sharp fire needles pierced the heart, and continuously transported Samadhi true fire into the heart along the fire needles. There was no hesitation in his movements, and his expression did not waver at all. He was a person without too many emotions, so naturally he had no fear or anxiety. He would only analyze the problem rationally, and then make the best choice. Even though he knew what death meant, he did not have the fear of facing death. Besides, it was not impossible to control him with his own will. Life was so boring, wouldn't it be interesting to die in an adventure? If he won, it would be even more worthwhile. Finally, the heart burned. Almost at the same time, the whole valley shook violently, and a painful wail came from the heart and Zhao Sun's mind at the same time. "So you feel pain too?" Zhao Sun added a flash of lightning to the flames, smiling, "Nothing more than that." The heart exploded instantly, and the broken flesh and blood exploded in the air. Before it could fall to the ground, it had completely disappeared. The next second, Zhao Sun felt that his internal organs were torn apart, and it felt like someone had stabbed him in the head, with needles one after another. Too much information poured into his mind, and too much power penetrated into his body, as if to stretch every cell of his to the limit. He was in so much pain that he curled up uncontrollably on the altar. Zhao Zhao saw this and hurried to the altar. "Ashui, how are you? What's wrong with you?" Seeing that heart exploded, she didn't have time to be happy that this thing was actually done, and she saw Zhao Sun suddenly fall to the ground. She had no idea what was going on, and couldn't see where Zhao Sun was injured, so she was at a loss for a while. Zhao Sun was in so much pain that he didn't have the strength to answer. He barely gathered some strength, took out an unyielding bone from the storage compartment, broke off a small section and ate it. In this short 10 seconds, he was sure that only mental power could resist this tearing feeling. But the consumption of mental power was too great. Even though his mental power was much stronger than that of ordinary people, it was exhausted in just 10 seconds. After replenishing his mental power, Zhao Sun finally felt that he could move a little. He only glanced at Zhao Zhao, said nothing, and suddenly disappeared. Zhao Zhao was stunned in place, and she felt unwell. She turned her head to look at the cave entrance. Zhao Sun's puppet was still standing there, still maintaining Zhao Sun's appearance. The primates and the crazy rabbits had been taken back into the special items by the puppet. She murmured, "Are you the real body?" The puppet shook his head, "I am a puppet." Now Zhao Zhao was really panicked. She immediately made a video call to the group to inform them of the situation. So Death, Han Bing and others all rushed over. At the moment when Heart was killed, the monsters on Death and Han Bing's side disappeared completely. All the sculptures in the 9th district that had not been destroyed turned back into their original human corpses, and the sculptures in the Liao family ancestral hall shattered without warning. It seems that the mastermind is really dead. The Grim Reaper exhaled slowly. Where did Shui go? Zhao Zhao had already told the whole story, but no one could guess why Zhao Sun was in such a situation. Could it be that killing the mastermind would cause some backlash? AMU carefully expressed his guess. Could he be dead? For a moment, everyone was silent. After a while, Han Bing suddenly said, "I just tried it, and found that I can no longer return to the endless train." Everyone was even more silent. This further proved that the person behind the scenes was indeed dead. The endless train disappeared, so the players on the endless train should soon return to the real world. But where did Zhao Sun go? Without the endless train, it would be impossible to return to the endless train. He disappeared out of thin air. Was he really dead? Everyone could not think of other possibilities, and could only accept the reality. In the end, they all returned to the real world. Those who had a home found a home, and those who didn't have a home went to where they wanted to go. Asterisk. 1 month later. Zhao Zhao had adapted to a peaceful life. She found that her special abilities were slowly fading, and her special items had all disappeared half a month ago. Everything reminded her that the survival game was completely over. Those thrilling past events seemed like a dream. But she occasionally thought of Zhao Sun, who suddenly disappeared, and felt a little sad. So, she set up a tablet for Zhao Sun, and burned incense for him when she thought of him. On this day, she burned incense as usual, and suddenly felt a shadow behind her. Having played so many survival games, she was much more alert than ordinary people. She turned around immediately. Then her eyes widened in surprise. Standing behind her was Zhao Sun. Zhao Sun was intact and in good health. Zhao Zhao looked at Zhao Sun in disbelief, and then smiled happily. "Shui, you are not dead. Well, you are alive and well." Zhao Sun had his usual warm smile on his face, and he seemed to be the same as before. His expression was gentle, his attitude was polite, but his eyes were indifferent and distant. He did struggle for a long time, probably more than 20 days. The spiritual power that unyielding bones replenished was far from enough, but he thought of a better way. Although he had not mastered too many of his abilities at that time, he could already enter all the survival games he had ever opened. In those survival games, he absorbed the spiritual power of all NPCs to replenish himself, constantly maintaining his body and mind, and resisting the tearing of his power. Every time the spiritual power of all NPCs was sucked out, the small world of the survival game would collapse. Fortunately, there are enough survival games. It was not until more than 20 days later that he finally succeeded in controlling everything, becoming him, and possessing all of his power. He had no intention of coming here again, but he felt new power from Zhao Zhao's offerings. So he came. "You can continue to offer, I like it." Zhao Sun smiled and said, "But don't look for me again, I won't come back." "Where are you going?" Zhao Zhao asked subconsciously. "Go to another world to see." Zhao Sun answered. Now that he has the ability to break through time and space, he doesn't like the excitement like his predecessor, who has to make a game to torment humans, so he might as well go to other time and space to have a look. There is nothing for him to miss here. The ashes of his adoptive mother have been buried in the house that belongs to his adoptive parents. He also found the body of his adoptive father from the dream game and buried it with his adoptive mother. And under his control, there will never be demolition and change there in the future. It can be regarded as a perfect fulfillment of his adoptive mother's last wish. Zhao Zhao didn't quite understand what Zhao Sun said, but she felt something. Biting her lip, she asked, "I'm still in touch with other companions. I want to tell them that you're still alive. Is that okay?" "Whatever." Zhao Sun didn't care. Zhao Zhao smiled, her eyes curved into a crescent shape. "Okay, then I wish you a pleasant journey." "Thank you." Zhao Sun thanked him politely and disappeared. Zhao Zhao stared blankly at the room where she was left, feeling a little dazed. Downstairs, her mother's voice suddenly rang out, "Zhao Zhao, come down for lunch." Zhao Zhao came to her senses, responded, and hurried downstairs. Her steps were brisk, with a relaxed smile on her face. It seemed that at this moment, she had finally truly regained her life. Well, not only her. Zhao Sun too.